What is up, everybody? Thanks everybody for showing up. That was a really cool discussion. My headphones are kind of messed up, so um, I'm not really hearing very good. How's the audio in the chat? Because my speakers are just like shaking, basically. Um, I see Mine Onion. What's up, Ronan? Nicholas. Appreciate you guys being here. I'm gonna put the link in the chat. Let's see. Let me just check to make sure everything's good. Fine audio, awesome. All right, so let me go on and put the link in the chat for you. If anybody's new to my channel, all right, hang on a second. All right, sorry about that. If anybody's new to my channel, I mainly just do open discussions. Sometimes I do like response videos or like debate reviews and things like that. So, but it's pretty localized actually. I haven't really done any like clickbaity videos to try and get popular or anything. But who knows? Maybe I'll change my methods. All right, so I'm copying the link. I'm gonna put it in the live chat, so anyone that they want to can come in here. Hey, what's up, One Way? Good to see you, man. Thanks so much for all your help helping me link up with other people on Discord. I've been spending a lot of time on Discord, but I get 0 notifications on Discord. And I'm not really sure why. Initially, I just turned off my notifications to tell me, to kind of tell me some of the other, like, when you're tagged at everyone and things like that. And for some reason, it just doesn't send me anything. So, all right, we got a person backstage already.
Hello.
Hey, what's up, Tanya?
I figured CJ would be here.
Have you been on my channel before? I can't recall.
Yeah, I went by midnight the last time I was here.
Okay, awesome. So let me just say before we get started here, man, who thinks that Skylar uh, has kind of mellowed out? Like I just felt like the Skylar of the past was a little more of a, um, I
I mean,
guess.
he still uses the baby argument, which I told him like, I, I don't know. Can't you pick a better example than bashing babies against rocks? Jesus.
Yeah.
And
Sorry.
I'm an atheist, by the way, so it's not
Sure.
like.
Yeah, you're saying it's like kind of like pulling heartstrings or something. But yeah, so I think that what's up to Nick? Nicholas, good to have you here, buddy. Um,
Good to see you.
yeah, good to see you. Your audio is really low. I'm not sure if that's just my headphones, but it seems really low.
Okay, yeah, so if it's too low, I can turn it up. It's definitely an option
Yeah,
here.
yeah. So what I was gonna say is like Skylar, I feel like he was really like laid back and more so than he used to be. But he's been on a trend like this for a long time. Like I feel like he's really been on a trend for a long time of like kind of maybe he's getting used to debating with because like the first time I debated Skylar, he was a deist. He wasn't an agnostic or an atheist or anything like that. So, back then he was just, basically contending with other people on all topics. I know he said that he was big into like Alan Watts and things like that. So he kind of had that spiritualist kind of vibe. And I feel like he's for a long time been kind of, since he became an agnostic, I believe he is. I think that he's been kind of mellowing out since then because I think he'd probably agree with that. And Ronan says he noticed that as well about him. Awesome. So, what did you guys think about the discussion? And
I was watching on and off, honestly, but it was interesting to watch, I suppose. Just on and off.
yeah, sure. What about you,
Was
Nick?
my audio?
It's better, but it still seems lower than the other person, Tanya.
I can fix that.
Tanya, does it seem like that to you, or is it just my
Yeah.
headphones?
How do I sound now?
Yeah, you sound
It sounds better.
you sound good.
Okay.
By
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
way,
because this is as high as I can get it. I could like
Yeah, that's
speak
fine.
into the mic for you guys, but that might be a little bit
yeah.
weird.
Hey, what's up to Patty Politics in the chat? Person I'm always talking with on Discord. You've caught one of my first live streams in quite a while, so.
Hey,
Uh,
Nicholas, didn't you? Sorry to interrupt you. I know this is your channel.
no, go
You're
ahead.
interacting. No, Nicholas. It's been a while since you and I talked. I remember you used to hang out with MK, right? On MK's channel.
Occasionally, yeah, yeah, I do remember your voice. Yeah, yeah. What was the name you used to go by?
Midnight Sparkle. I still fucking
Oh
hate
yeah.
my voice.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, no, no. Midnight Sparkle. Yeah, I remember you. Yeah, it's good to connect with you again. Yeah. Um, MK is sort of prone to spiraling out, and I haven't spoken to him in years.
I
To answer your,
mean,
oh, go ahead.
no, I just wanted to say he's on Discord now. He invited me to one of his servers, and I'm like, yeah, no. Am I still in there? No, I think I
Yeah,
left a while ago.
in my experience, he'll make a new profile and then start a new group and then sort of start to spin out of control and then delete everything. He's done
Yeah.
that even since plus.
Bob the trucker actually had an interesting theory about that, right? Like, he thought MK was doing this whole like social experiment, psychological experiment or something because he would disappear for like 6 months or something to school and then he would come back. He
Oh,
had like this weird conspiracy theory of
I,
MK.
I don't think that was it. I think it usually had to do with him being challenged on some theological topic that he realized he couldn't
No, no,
defend.
no.
Who,
I
who
know,
is
I know.
this?
It was
Oh,
interesting.
MK?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah,
What's
But
it
up
was.
to,
bring it back to away from drama and back to the current conversation.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
going to
no.
yeah.
begin.
I wasn't trying to go the drama route. I was just, bringing up, you know, old people.
Fair
Not
enough. Yeah.
old people. Yeah, go
To
ahead.
answer Converse's question, I have to apologize. I didn't see most of the debate, and I haven't
Okay.
followed Skylar. He's actually the guy that originally invited me onto the Google Plus community, so
Yeah.
he kind of got me
Okay.
involved in that whole thing. But I've never really spoken to him much, so I don't know him well. I don't know how much he's changed. I didn't watch much of the debate. I am familiar with the slaughter of the Canaanites, and I can say some things on that, but in terms of the debate or Skylar himself, I can't say too much.
Yeah. So just say hey to everybody. Patty Politics, I see you in the chat. Feel free, everybody that wants to come in. I put the link in the description, or I'm sorry, I put the link in the live chat. So you can
May
come
I
in if you want.
suggest?
P Mars,
Sorry.
what's up? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
May I suggest you pin it? You pin the link for easy access because
Sure.
because
Yeah, I'll pull up the.
it will get lost in the chat.
Sure. Let me try and pull that up. Hey to Hard X Core Darkness and Brenda. What's going on? How are you?
I'm fine. What's up? What's the Christian defense of genocide?
Well, we're just like introducing right now, and then we're going to talk about the.
Well,
the
later
show.
you'll get to the defense of genocide.
I'd love to
That's
discuss
pretty
it.
funny.
Brenda
Yeah,
coming
like,
in hot.
well, let's say to Hardcore X Darkness as well. Like, what did you guys think about the debate, and do you want to introduce yourselves?
I think it was a solid debate. I mean, from the atheist side, I think there was a lot of good arguments raised, and
Sure.
yeah, I mean, I love James's channel. I watch a lot of debates, so I think it's a good one.
Yeah, I also really like modern day debate. I appreciate the debates they put on, and I love moderating when I can. Okay, I just pinned the link. So, Brenda, what did you think about the debate? Did you see it?
Frankly, I just got here. I
Oh,
just
okay.
opened up the thing. I saw that James was signing off, so I clicked here. But I'm familiar. I've seen the other debates, and
Yeah.
it seems that Josh has said that it's the Canaanites are misrepresented.
Yeah. So I like Dr. Josh, and I think that he's I think that he's correct on a lot of his positions. And matter of fact, I made a video couple of, I want to say 2-3 weeks or a month or so ago, called things I was wrong about. And one of the things was Josh corrected me on a Bible verse that uh, I had misremembered, and so I actually made a video telling everybody that I wasn't correct about that, and that he corrected me on it. So I really appreciate him doing that. But I have heard his critique, and it's mainly he had on Dr. His name's Brenton, I believe his name is. I can look it up, but he was I guess a Canaanite expert, and I did make a response video to it, challenging many of the claims made. So based on archaeology and reports that I read, and then also based on, it just seemed like for example, Josh asked him like, well, people say Canaanites killed their babies or sacrificed their babies to Moloch. Is that actually true? And then he just kind of said, like, I'm not sure, Josh. You probably would know that better than me, right? So, things like that where I just, I don't know. I disagree with some of their positions, and although I do agree with Josh that some of the scholarship is. Some of the common views are misrepresented. I believe that for the majority, we have text from Phoenicians and a lot of these other archaeological digs to put together what we know about them. And so, yeah. But anyway, that's kind of a long about way. Welcome to Patty. Thanks for joining us tonight. You didn't see the debate, I guess?
I didn't. What was it about? I'm sorry, I was late.
Well, it was supposed to be about the Canaanites in the Bible, but it kind of focused around morality and like I guess you could say like ethical theory or something like that. I mean,
Was it like on something specific?
Oh yeah. So let me just say hey to CJ because he was in the debate. CJ, the link is pinned. If you want to come in, you're welcome to come in as well. But yeah, so basically, a lot of non-believers look at the killing of like the Canaanites in the Old Testament, and they say basically that, like, because of that, therefore God is immoral or something like that, and that's kind of the position that Skylar took tonight. And
it seems like an odd position to take.
Why is that odd?
Well, it seems like an odd position because you're starting that based upon your moral framework, right? When we talk about, like moral frameworks, right, and you talk about like religious moral frameworks, you're still talking about like a moral framework that is objective, that is upheld by a God, right? Or else if we were to talk about, hold on,
that's not what objective means.
well,
What do you think? Well, okay, what is your opinion of what objective means?
It means independent of an opinion.
It means mind independent, right? Yeah. According to you. Okay, so
like,
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, he could not be a mind. Maybe he's not a mind then.
So one thing I would clarify on is that like so what is meant by mind independent typically is stance independent or independent of anybody's opinion or stance on the topic. So I could just use the qualifier stance independent, and
that's a good way to describe that.
Yeah, that isn't going to change anything.
Of course it does, because then you can't negate God for being a mind.
Sorry, real quick, hey contender, I'm gonna move onto my computer. So when I come back, that's just me.
Not a problem. I'll let you back in. Hey, what's up, Ronan? Good to see you here. Haven't seen you in a while.
Welcome, Ronan.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I've seen you in Dragnot's chat, I think, a couple times.
Yes. I really don't know where to go because the way I'm seeing what you all are sharing, there's a lot of points, right, that can be picked up and focused on. But let's just go with the morality thing. Objectively, those people in that frame and time knew no better. And I liken it to like toddlers, because we're a species with higher order thinking skills. We have the capacity, but that potential is there, yes, but we didn't have the information. So, like a child, the fantasy was, how do we answer this without knowing what it is? Let's
Who
call
didn't?
it.
Who didn't know any better? Who didn't know any better?
No, the point being, it's let's call it a god, right? And so those in power use that mind tool, because God is of the mind. Unless there's evidence in reality, it's of the mind. Two different things.
Who didn't know any better?
Let me finish my presentation, please.
I didn't know it was a presentation. I thought we were just talking.
Well, no, yes, but I'm trying to set this up so you understand where I'm
Yeah,
coming
let's let everybody get their points out.
because you all speak at a certain level that I'm not really familiar with, because I don't know all the quotes and nuances of what you're discussing. I can appreciate it as a listener, yes, but you have never heard my perspective, and I understand that in reality. So if you want to interrupt me, I can leave, man.
No, Ronan.
If you're just as bad
Ronan,
as everybody else, no matter what you believe in, I don't care. It's
No,
about
Ronan,
the
that's
content of your character.
I just
I don't
wanted
care
to
what you
know.
believe, and if that's the way it is, please, I'll leave.
No,
But
don't leave.
I wanted
Ronan.
to bring
Let's not
something
get
to
too
the
hostile.
table. I wanted to bring something to the table that was different in terms of perspective, so you could weigh the idea one versus the other.
Right, let's do
Apparently
that.
that's not what you want
That's
to
great,
do,
Ronan. But
because you want to have your little group think discussions that is limited to what you want to accept in current discussion.
No,
That's what
Ronan,
that is.
the
That's
person that
what
was
that is, and that's what makes you as bad as theist. Anyway,
yeah.
I
Oh, you were talking to
apologize.
Brenda.
Thank
guys.
you,
That's
Congress
fine.
contender. I'm out of here, man. I
You don't have
can't play on this field, dude. No,
Ronan,
I'm thinking
would you
outside
listen
your
to me?
box, and y'all apparently can't handle it. So
Ronan,
thank you so much.
would you-
I'll be in the chat though. Appreciate
All
it.
right,
Good
buddy.
work, Congress.
Thanks for coming in.
You're welcome.
Ronan?
You're most welcome. Take
Ronan,
care,
would you
all.
listen to me before you leave?
Dude,
No.
nobody
That's fine.
said anything.
Well, Brenda, you're being very hostile. All we want to do is have a
Oh, I'm
conversation.
not. I'm not being hostile. I asked a question. People were like children. I wanted to know who was acting like children. That's all I said.
I have to say that Ronan has a really bad habit of talking and not listening, and I would really like him to be here and interact and offer
Sure.
his opinion and interact with it. But
Okay.
I think that he is very sensitive to being asked not to overtalk people, because he's been asked that so many times before.
Well, let's move on from that, and let's just welcome everybody to the room. Hardcore Darkness, you haven't really said much yet. Do you want to say anything?
I mean, I'm from the. So I'm from an atheist
I
perspective.
won't be in the same room with this porn bombing troll.
Oh, really? Is that what he's gonna do? Hardcore Darkness. If you're gonna porn bomb, dude, I can't have you on. Because somebody did that to Spartan Theology the other day. If anybody can vouch for Hardcore Darkness, let me know.
He's talking about me. I'm not a porn bomber.
This
Oh,
got
you?
weird really quick.
Oh, sorry.
I was gonna defend Brenda because I
Sorry
thought
about that.
Brenda was being nice or not hostile at all. I thought Ronan just was acting like a baby for no reason. It was,
Yeah. P. Mars,
like
you gonna try and
laughing.
porn bomb on here, brother?
No, I've never porn bombed. That's a vile rumor that people are spreading with no direct evidence. Like Brenda likes direct evidence, right? But she doesn't have any for that. But that doesn't stop her from accusing me.
Well, I will. I mean, I'll just say this up front. Like, I don't mind to just delete this and then start over again, but it just would be better if we don't have to. So I'm glad to hear that you're not going to do that. Since CJ's here, sorry, Hardcore Darkness, I kind of cut you off because I thought you were going to. Like, I was watching Spartan Theology the other day, and somebody porn bombed his live stream, and so he had to like jump off of it or whatever. But go ahead, Hardcore Darkness. Sorry.
I didn't even know that was a thing. But I'm from the atheist perspective, so
sure.
Like I don't have any biblical background to that.
Yeah, feel free to ask any questions or whatever.
Yeah, no, from my perspective, I thought that CJ had a lot of valid points. I don't particularly like the atheist debater in terms of his presentations of his arguments, but yeah, what I wanted to refer like to Ronan, and I really I don't know who that he is really, but like I kind of feel bad because I think what he meant was that we as a species, I mean, even though it wasn't that long ago, were kind of infantile in our understanding as opposed to as we are now in terms of ethics, because whether or not there is an objective morality, we had sort of a lesser understanding at that time, and that's what he meant.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, and I mean that's probably the case as well, but or that's probably part of it. I think what Patty was trying to say earlier, and that kind of made sense to me, was that how can you like if you like so Patty and I have talked about moral ethics a lot on Discord together, and so we kind of know like where the main points that are being brought out all the time. And so like it's most atheists on there will agree that, oh no, like I start with this axiom, that says, this point or whatever, right? Like you should not worship God. Therefore, if you do, it's immoral. Like they're starting with that axiom. So that's why Patty was saying like, well, if people that start with God is righteous or moral or whatever, then the only way you can say is just to say like I disagree. My starting point is different or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? It's not.
Yeah.
You can't say that that's like God's immoral or something like that.
Yeah, it's just so like okay. So like one can make claims, right, about morality the way that they see fit. That's what subjective morality is all about. And like that's fine and all right. But still, even if you were to presuppose that God is a mind, right, you would have to validate that your morality is of more value than the morality of God. That would still be something that you would have to have an argument about. Like we can argue about if God is a mind or not, right? But essentially, like I actually just had this conversation on Discord with some atheists and non-believers, I think yesterday, right? Like it was, okay, what about slavery? Do you think slavery is wrong? Like slavery is bad, bad, bad. And I'm like, okay, so like what's the point of bringing up slavery in the Bible? Like, can you justify to me of slavery not, actually being something that's morally wrong? They couldn't. So all I could say was, okay, what you're trying to do in this discussion is you're just trying to emote about it. You're just trying to bring up your emotions or anyone else's emotions to be like, ill, that's icky, so it's not moral, which really isn't much of an argument.
It's like saying boo slavery or something.
But the Christian God is against slavery. Like
I agree with that.
I agree.
Like, I hear these atheists always say that, like they kind of imply that God likes slavery or something or promotes it, but the early Christians in Rome actually worked to end slavery in Rome, and they nearly ended it, except for in remote parts of the empire. So
well, let's get
they never mentioned that fact.
See that, but that's another thing. Like, I'm sorry.
Let's say hey to CJ. He was actually in the debate, so let's get him in here to say something. Hey, what's up, Lucer? I'm in the chat. What's up, CJ? What's
up?
Yeah,
I appreciate you. Well, and I would just say, I guess, a couple things. First off, I'm happy to hear, Hardcore Darkness, that you actually found my arguments to be good, because it's always, don't get me wrong, it's great to hear theists tell me that my arguments are good, but I can never necessarily guarantee that they don't have a confirmation bias. So it's always great to have non-theists say that they have solid arguments. So I appreciate that. I would just kind of point out, I think to an extent, when you're saying, well, you have to justify your morality and stuff like that, I agree with that completely, but I do think to an extent it's kind of a different conversation. When you're asking, is X ethical, and X happens to be something that God is doing, I think you kind of assume the worldview already. And that's kind of why I was trying to tell Skylar, like, I mean, if you had something internally within this Bible that would contradict God's nature in what he's doing, then use that, because that seems to me to be, if you're assuming the worldview, that seems to be the best way to.
What does assuming the worldview mean?
So basically arguing as if God is true.
Okay,
that God,
so we're
exists.
just granting that in this discussion.
In the discussion, well, what me and Skylar just did basically is yes, to an extent, because you kind of have to, right? If you are asking the question, for example, did God, was God justified in flooding the world, right? Well, that narrative assumes that God flooded the world, right? So you're basically asking, is this event internally consistent?
Okay.
You can't say is it externally consistent because it doesn't matter if it, externally didn't happen.
So I hate to be this person, right? But I actually just really don't think that matters, right? Whether you think that the story is real or not doesn't really matter to the discussion of is what happened justified. Like, we can have conversations about the Epic of Gilgamesh in which we talk about our feelings about what a character did. We can have conversations about other novels where we talk about what characters did. Do we agree with it, and do we think that is justified? I don't think that, like, by talking about stories of the Bible, you're automatically granting that it's true.
Well, I don't think just the nature of talking about it for sure is, but like when you're asking the question is like of these people, with the actions that were taken ethical, you got to understand the Epic of Gilgamesh is not a God claim, right? Right. And well, the reason that's important is because obviously, if God is the person who's dictating what is moral and what is righteous and all those sorts of things, then the things he does are moral and are righteous, right? It's sort of like, it's almost like saying, is Superman a super person in his universe? It's like, well, obviously it's like they're in the name. That's the whole point of having a Superman. You know what I mean?
By virtue of reading the story, right? If we talk within context of the story, we can understand the logical steps taken in order to understand why a character did this or that, right? And so even whether like God exists or not, whether the Bible is actually asserting that God exists or not, we can understand by virtue of the logic taken within the Bible, that the story that has been implemented in the Bible, we can start from there and decide whether the Christian God or the Hebrew God did something that's logically in line with the story.
Right. That's exactly what I was talking about. That's called an internal critique. You're stepping within the worldview and assuming the basic truths of it so that you can see if it's internally consistent.
Yeah, but I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah, that's really the only way to do it, though. And
right?
The only way to really to show somebody's worldview of being inconsistent is to do that. And like, if I were to go to, and I say this all the time, but like if I were to go to a utilitarian worldview and I would say something like, well, God says it's immoral, and they're just like an atheist utilitarian, they're just like, I don't care. But if I go like, wait a second, so you're saying that if we kill 100 million people to save 2 billion, it's fine? And then, like, you see what I'm saying? I would bring up something that would be good on utilitarianism. And so I think Skylar was trying to do that, because he typically does try to do that. But I think some of the arguments were lacking. I would say that, so let me ask you this, CJ. So one thing I would point out is, so you said at one point that you had heard that God created the world this way because he wanted to save like the most amount of people freely or whatever, but you said like you didn't think there was a biblical basis for that. But like the statement that God doesn't wish that any should perish, right? That does seem like kind of a basis for that, right?
Well, I would want to just correct the terminology just a little bit. It's not that I don't think there's a biblical basis. It's that I don't think it's explicitly biblical. So basically, the only thing I mean by that is to say, I have a verse, John 20:28, my Lord and my God, for Jesus' divinity, right? It's explicitly biblical. Mm-hmm. I don't have that for, like, for example, the rapture, right? I believe that for sure. I believe that the Bible teaches that, but I have to kind of put verses together. The word rapture isn't just going to be plainly there in front of me, right? That's kind of what I mean in that situation, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So, okay, sorry. Hardcore Darkness, you're the only non-theist, I think, in the room. So do you want to, did you have any questions about the discussion, or that you, anything that you thought was lacking? Oh, hey, Math Pig and Modern Day Debate. Appreciate you guys
not
being here. Check this out. Go ahead.
This is not like it intentionally lacking. It's so arguing. If you argue from a side of objective morality, I believe that you have the burden of proof that there is such thing as an objectivity to morality. So to take the moral high ground would not make sense, and so there is no like, okay, because the Bible says that killing babies is encouraged, even though that's not necessarily the case. That therefore your God is claiming that killing babies is righteous, and therefore I am more moral than your God. I don't believe
Yeah.
is a good argument
So
because, well, you have to make some sort of, you have to have proof that there is an objectivity to morality to say that your argument is is correct in terms of that you are more moral than God.
sure, that's a good point, and I have heard Skylar make that claim before. Actually, I thought Skylar did pretty well. I thought that he kind of leaned on the heartstrings a bit, but besides that, like I have heard him say that before, that like I'm more moral than your God, right? But like my thing is this like if you, it's hard to think about judging the being that created humans by human normative ethics. Like that's really hard for me to that leap in logic to be like, we judge human by human normative ethics, but we should also judge God by our human standards of ethics or whatever, right?
Yeah,
And
I have
so,
an issue with
but the
that
other
too.
thing is that I have a more nuanced view, of course. This is a lot of, there's going to be some theists obviously that disagree with me, but I do think there was something different about the people who were killed. And number one, so I have a video called "Response to Skylar Fiction on the Canaanites," and if you check out that video, basically what I do is um, I basically go through Dr. Michael Heiser's work on the Unseen Realm book, which shows that like the Canaanites, the Amalekites, and some of these other groups are linked to the Nephilim from Genesis chapter 6, which were the fallen, the giants, you say, right? And they're called like unusually large people throughout. So I'm just saying there's something different about them, right? Their bloodline. And it seems as though if you read through the text, it seems as though they're trying to eradicate a certain type of people from within these groups. So for what I mean by that is you'll see it say we totally destroyed the Amalekites there. But then you'll see later on Amalekites showing back up in the text. You'll see like you'll see this, and I lay out all the text in that video. You'll see this with many of them, and then like they'll show back up, even like Uriah, one of David's soldiers, right? Like, so that's kind of where I'm coming from with that is when it says that they totally destroyed these people, the Amalekites, but then Amalekites show back up. You can either do the taxi cab fallacy and say, oh well, I'll go with the text until it gets here, and then I'll just say it's a contradiction. Or you can say, well, hold on. If it said they totally destroyed them, and then later on in the narrative, it says that they ran across one of them, what's the what's going on here? And I think it is that there were a certain like unholy union or something like that, right? From Genesis chapter 6, that point, in these groups that were destroyed from the groups, but not like the actual groups themselves, if that makes sense. So it's kind of a long about position, but there's a lot of scriptural basis for
it. So I think that definitely does make sense, but I do want to challenge it if I may.
Yeah, sure.
So obviously the primary challenge has to come from scripture, and so I want to do that at some point. But before then, I just want to point out why I think it's important to challenge this. And just to be clear, I don't say this to try and start a fight or anything like that. Obviously, we're all Christian brothers, right? And sister, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah. But so I think it would behoove us to understand that when God wipes out groups like the Canaanites or like the people in Noah's day or Sodom and Gomorrah and stuff like that, the reason that we kind of like, cringe a little bit and wow, that's just brutal and violent is because it is, and it's supposed to be. It's the punishment of sin, right?
Yeah.
God, interestingly enough, while he doesn't have nearly as many death penalties as Dakota Hammurabi, for example, where it's just, it's an obscene number, and you can like mutilate people and all this other kind of disgusting stuff, right? There is still 32 different laws in the Mosaic Code where the penalty is death, right? And of course, Jesus amplifies that. He says the penalty for all sin is death. I think that actually ends up coming through Paul, if I'm not mistaken, but it's the same spirit. And I think, what we see in these stories really is supposed to be like an image for us in our heads of this is what sin is actually worthy of, which is why we have the necessity for a savior in the first place, right? And I think a lot of times, a lot of us have even experienced that ourselves. And what I mean by that is that somebody has done something horrible to us where it's just like, this has caused whatever, X amount of psychological, financial, potentially physical problems, right? Like completely ruined your life potentially. Like it's an evil, evil thing that this person did. You know what it is. I don't. The point being, though, you've probably done that too. And that's the way God looks at all the sin, right?
Yeah, of course.
And
like, I think I get what you're saying is like, regardless, it doesn't mean that God's immoral, even if there isn't an explanation. Right? Is that what you're kind of getting at?
Well,
It's
that's
like
part of it.
Okay.
But another part of it is basically like, you ever seen the meme, the like, I'll do it again meme?
I don't think so.
Well, so it's this basically like a meme of a very crude and kind of grotesque looking Goofy from, Mickey Mouse. And he's just saying, sort of like, I don't know, like angrily, I'll do it again after somebody puts something before it that's like, after you just smacked your little brother for taking your Pop-Tart or something like that. And it's like, I'll do it again. Usually there's some profanity laced in it as well.
Gotcha.
But the reason I bring it up is because that I think is part of it, right? I think that, when we start to like, I guess, belittle to an extent what God actually did in judging nations, we sort of belittle our own sin and the potential for that to come upon us. You know what I mean? We brought it up in that conversation. I'll just say it here plainly. Like any nation that not only we all go to murdering 900,000, excuse me, 900 million, 900,000 babies in the womb every year. But what about invading foreign nations constantly and for reasons that by our own constitution are considered illegal, right? What about the fact that we export tons of pornography and indeed we export people? And in many instances, even the populace is okay with the exportation and exploitation of people because you'll still buy things like Nestle chocolate, for example, even though it's well known that they have active slave colonies that they get chocolate from in Africa, right? And things of that nature. And when you start looking at it from that perspective and then comparing us to the Canaanites, right, it's like we really should start letting people know, yes, this is what God did, because I personally fear that if we get too detached from what actually happened in these judgments, that we get too detached from what we actually are guilty of in our sins, that like God will do it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I guess what I would say is that the difference here, because, the difference here is, so I agree with you with whenever there's people that say things like, well, the flood was just to wipe out the Nephilim. That's not what it was. It was to wipe out all of the evil people that were, as the Bible says, their thoughts were continuously evil all the time. So I would agree with you if somebody was doing that, right? But what I'm saying is that in the text, when it says the Amalekites who came from the Nephilim, I'm claiming that there's something different about about the group of people they're speaking of. And then Og, king of Bashan, who was the last of the Raphites, right? When they went in and killed Og, the king of Bashan, which is the place of the serpent in the Old Testament. And then and it bragged about the size of his bedstead, right? It said that his bedstand was like 9.5 cubits or something like that. And they say, and it's still there today, like as in you can go see it if you want to or whatever, right? It's a big iron bedstead. And then the same thing with the Amalekites. It says we look like grasshoppers compared to them. Now that's of course just a euphemism, I think it is, to say like the guy's as big as a house or something like that, right? But I don't think that they were like 30 foot tall or anything. Like as Heiser points out, it's probably more like 7 to 9 feet would be pretty compared to the size of people back then, but whatever. So I'm just saying that in these texts, when you look at them, like when Og's killed, it says he was the last of the Raphites, and they are linked to the Amalekites later on in the Bible. In the Amalekites, it says who came from the Nephilim. So I'm saying the reason why these groups of people who are being destroyed are being destroyed, it's odd that they feel compelled to tell their lineage. Also, in other Second Temple period literature, it still says it basically tells this exact same narrative, right? As if this was the thought of the time. And then in obviously Second Peter and Jude, they say the same thing. The angels that kept not their first estate. This whole narrative is like, and then the Deuteronomy 32 worldview, obviously. So I would just say that there's like throughout the entirety of Scripture, there's like this underlying narrative that had been going on from Genesis all the way to Revelation. So that's what I'm saying is that there's something different here. But I agree with you that like you can't just blame it on that, right? Because it's just like when you do wrong, you're going to get punished, right? So and there's nothing wrong with God punishing evil. So like if that's what you're trying to get at, like I agree with you. I would just say that like I do think there's something different here. It's the same way with when people, sorry, one more thing and I'll let everybody else say something, but like it's the same way that when people say that like I think I heard Smokey saying that like no, the Bible just says that it's fine with slavery. And if you're thinking that that's wrong, then you're wrong or something like that, and that the Bible's fine with slavery or something like that. Then you have to, the same way in this narrative where you have to explain the bloodline narratives and the angels that fell narratives, the Genesis chapter 6 narratives, all these things. In the same way with slavery, you have to tell me, you have to explain the book, the letter of Philemon. You have to explain why in Titus it says the slave traders will be amongst the wicked liars and thieves. You have to explain like, why you couldn't capture a runaway slave. You have to explain like there's all these things that you have to constantly explain if you're going to take that view. Where the other view seems like it almost accounts for it better. And so I would just say I'm open to any view, but I just think that it's explained better, I guess. What do you guys think?
Well, so I just have a question and a curiosity.
Yeah,
I
sure.
know that this is not the view of even half of the people in the Nephilim field, but I'm just and by which I mean people who think a lot about that stuff. But I'm just curious. Do you by chance adhere to like a serpent seed doctrine?
By that, do you mean that there is people today that were the seed of Eve and a reptilian being or something like that?
So that is certainly one version of it, but basically it's that last part that's the focus. That basically that there was a literal seed of Satan that came through Eve via Cain.
No.
Okay.
No,
I just wanted to
yeah, I
clarify.
definitely don't take that. It just doesn't seem to be borne out in the text. Yeah.
I think that your Nephilim.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
1 second, Larry. Let's synagogue. He is CJ. Just by the way, he said in the text that you sound like CJ. Go ahead, Nick. Sorry about that.
I think that there's room in the text to read that as getting rid of the Nephilim. It's not explicit, especially in the Canaanites, right? Like it's not mentioned at all, I think, with the Canaanites. And I think what's really important here is that this story focuses on driving out these wicked people. And we see with Rahab that the people knew that this was that the Israelites were coming and that they were going to take over this land. They said that like our hearts melted when we heard it. We heard about all these things that you did in these other places, and we knew you were coming. We melted in fear to you. And she says, "I'll help you out, and spare my family." And they do that. They agree to do that. And so obviously this isn't like a sort of nationalistic genocide or collective guilt or anything like that.
Well, keep in mind what I said earlier, that when it says Amalekites and they show up later on, that I think there are people amongst the Amalekites, the Canaanites, and some of these other groups, because the Canaanites are actually lumped in with them.
I don't think my point is a counterpoint to what you're saying.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, I just think these people were amongst those people, in that they were, and that God's view was to like in Genesis, you know, the stories in Genesis chapter 6, that it says the sons of God saw the daughters of humans, that they were beautiful and had children with them. They bore great giants, men of renown. And so I'm just saying that.
But whether it's Nephilim or not, it's not about their race. It's not about their color. It's about their corruption and their wickedness.
Oh, sure. I mean, I could agree with that, but you could probably agree with me that, like, when it says that, you know, like, because of the what the angels did, they're locked in chains of darkness, right? So I'm saying it's the same thing as that the Israelites are tasked with ridding the earth of this, you might say, an unholy union or something like that, of people that you might say that aren't from this realm or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't see that larger mission being offered in the Bible. Perhaps that God got them to do it at certain times, but like we don't see a larger mission or like saying, "Be ready for this. In the end times, you're going to be needing to genocide these people" or something like that. And so I would be worried about teachings, especially outside of the church.
That's not my view.
Lead to that idea.
Right, that's not my view, right? Because I think that God's I think it was accomplished, right? Okay. So I don't think that it even lasts till today. So like I don't think in Revelation we're talking about.
Do you get that from the text?
Yeah, because when it says we slaughtered all of them and we left not one and things like that, and then you see somebody, an Amalekite later on, or like a Canaanite later on, in the text, it's obviously deriving a difference between those people, right? And then some of them even fought in the Israelites' army, right?
It's obviously making a distinction.
Can I chime in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. So because I'm, you know, from the atheist standpoint, I see the Bible and the apocryphal text, the Book of Enoch, kind of on the same level. So in that sense, the Nephilim were extinguished because of what they were. They weren't human. They were something else. So I wouldn't call or question the morality of God in terms of humanity.
Yeah, well, that's kind of that's kind of that's kind of like the argument, right? Is that like there's something different about these people in the conquest, that they're not just you know, your average people just hanging out, and the Israelites come in and God orders them to slaughter them, right? Like that's kind of the argument, right? Because, yeah. But I'm not saying that, like, to answer CJ's point, right? I'm not saying that that's an impossible, like that couldn't possibly be. It's just saying that, like, I don't think that's what it's relaying. I think that Heiser's right in the Second Temple period literature, as you pointed out. One of those is the Book of Enoch. But also you can see the Book of the Giants, the War Scrolls. Like there's a lot of other literature from that time period that has this exact same narrative and tells this exact same story. And so all I'm saying, and like I kind of hate to pigeonhole myself into this, but like this is kind of like because I feel like I talk about the topic a lot, and it's kind of a strange topic to talk about, and it's, you know, because it's it does have a supernatural element to it, you know, and that's why Heiser ended up just saying like he has to tell like his academic friends that like I'm not going to protect people from their Bibles, because that's like they're like, hey dude, do you really want to talk about this kind of like stuff around, you know, people that, you know, they just pray to Jesus and like, you know, they just read like the daily verse of the day and stuff like that, and they don't really understand. He's like, dude, I'm not going to protect people from their Bible. So I just think that if you're going to say that these are just normal people and that God was just judging these people because they were rude to Israel or whatever, in that they broke God's law or whatever, just like Israel did or whatever when God judged them with the Assyrians and the Babylonians. I think what you have to do is you have to ignore all the Second Temple literature that they all were familiar with. You have to ignore like Jude quoting the book of Enoch and saying the angels that fell. You have to ignore all of those references to the bloodlines of these people, and then the underlying narrative that flows from Deuteronomy chapter 32, Genesis 6, all the way to, you know, Revelation, to, you know, the New Testament all over. Paul's voyages, if you read enough Heiser, like I overuse Heiser a lot, I do, but it's because he has done all this hard research. If you read Heiser and just look at Paul's travels, when Paul sets out on his travels and like look at the places he goes, and then ask yourself, why did he have to make it to Spain? When he's like, I got, you know, I'm going to come and see you guys, you know, but I've got to go to Spain first, you know. And that thing, that's kind of like, what? But then when you look at the 70 nations, if you look at Deuteronomy 32, you'll see that there's a pattern why Paul was traveling to these nations, right? To these different places. And there are other things like this. There are like hundreds of different little things like that underlying all the text, that like even Paul saying women should cover their hair on account of the angels, you know, and all these types of things like this that are just like little hints and things that are just saying like, you know, I think Christians sometimes they don't want to have the supernatural, all that in it, because it's like, well, that's kind of, you know, people make fun of it, or they'll say like, oh, you believe in this? Well, that's ridiculous. But it's like, it's either true or it isn't. Yeah.
I think it's good to be open to it and very
Sure.
interesting to learn about the ancient
I could be
Near
wrong.
East and things like that. I think there is a real danger, and I've seen it with a lot of people, where they study Heiser or the ancient Near East, and they think that this is the true interpretation of the church and the true understanding of Christianity. And if you just look at the history of the church, that would be a really dumb way of doing it. Like if you look at Christmas and the celebration of Christmas, which is obviously about the birth of Christ and celebrating the Mass, it's to say that is truly, it's really about Saturnalia, is to totally misunderstand the christening of that event and what the church did. And that
I wouldn't make that point.
Yeah,
I wouldn't agree with that.
So I think it's interesting to learn, and it's great to be open to it and things like that. I'm concerned that a lot of people read it and they get really excited. It's almost like a mystery cult thing.
Oh
I
actually,
inside information.
Yeah, sorry, one more thing. I actually am not that excited about talking about it, even though I just feel like it has explanatory power and scope, but I feel like whether it's the case or not, like, right, it could just be a mythologized like thing that Israel believed or something like that from the ancient times, you know, like just an old story about or whatever. But what I'm pointing out is that I don't really get excited to talk about it that much because I don't know, it's just kind of a strange topic, and it seems it's one of those things where people can just like write you off and be like, you believe that? Like, that's ridiculous.
That's funny.
You know.
I don't think I've ever talked to you and not had you bring up the Nephilim and Michael Heiser.
What was that?
I don't think I've ever spoken to you and not have you bring those topics up.
Well, we hadn't really spoke that many times, I don't think. But yeah, if we're talking about biblical in the Old Testament,
we spoke a few times. Yeah.
Yeah, we have spoken a few times.
I've spoken to him. I've spoken to him a few times, and this is the first time he's ever brought it up.
Yeah, she's never heard that.
There you go. Maybe it's a new leaf for you.
Well, usually it's because this argument about these Old Testament atrocities are like, they're so popular amongst YouTube atheists or like internet atheists that I feel like although I thought CJ did a good job, like I feel like there's that explanation as well. Like it should be something that we should, at least have on the table. So, yeah, I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
It's a shame that like the Christian story is this idea of the development of the people and raising them up and improving the world that they live in, and yet atheists look at these harsh worlds that the Jews were in and the early Christians were in, and they judge them according to modern standards, as if like we already lived in this world.
Right. It's an antiquated view, right?
Not antiquated. That would be what's the word for ahistorical?
Anachronistic.
Yeah, anachronistic. Yeah, sure.
Well, to be fair, I think a big portion of the reason why atheists pick on those atrocities, quote unquote, is honestly because like Christians are kind of unwilling to defend them. It seems like
Right.
a lot of times you have a lot of people who that they want to distance themselves from the Old Testament as if it doesn't exist. And I mean, it's gotten to the point now, of course, I'm sure a lot of you are even familiar with this. It's gotten to the point now to where we're even like, changing some of the laws, in regards to like divorce and homosexuality and stuff like that. Right. Which I guess I don't know where anybody here stands, but to be fair, the scripture is clear. Right. And honestly, I think that they see that as a weakness and they pick on it because of the fact that, we kind of treat it as if it's a weakness. I don't think a lot of Christians truly believe that the Mosaic law really was divine righteousness and that it was, that it was supposed to show us the what would you call that, character of God, right? I think a lot of them just think, oh, well, that was then and this is now and we're in a new covenant. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people's Jesus is a hippie, for crying out loud, right? Like, but it's in reality, it's not who Jesus is. Jesus claims to be the God of the Old Testament who did some stuff that we might consider rough. They're righteous and just, though, right? But we might consider them to be rough. And of course,
know. I honestly feel like and sorry to cut you off. Do you want to finish? I'm sorry.
Oh no, go right ahead. I was kind of gonna ramble on a little bit, honestly.
So like I don't know. Like I agree with some of what you're saying, right? Like a lot of Christians don't want to touch the stuff about slavery and stuff like that. But my thing is this: is that atheists have been, or non-believers have been playing this game for a long time. Like they've been doing it on YouTube ever since they got on YouTube. Like the whole like slavery bad, you're Christian and it has slavery in the Bible, that's bad thing has been going on for years. I think just for the most part, like many of them are just kind of tired of it. Like they're tired of just going over it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I can pretty much agree with that. Oh, sorry, Brenda. I'll bring you in.
Oh, there's some like really, really loud background noise.
Oh, really? Do you guys hear that?
Yeah, I think check if your gain. Yeah, I think it is. Check if your gain.
I think that is my fan just came on my computer.
Oh, okay.
That's weird.
So hang on one second. I'm going to fix that. I'll bring you in, Brenda. Hang on one second. All right, you guys go ahead.
Desperately wants your attention in the side chat.
Yeah, can you, this P. Mars guy, what the heck?
Oh yeah, sorry. The guy he oh well now no.
He's posting in the live chat.
Yeah. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, Pete Mars doesn't really, I don't know. He doesn't really like to be told no, and this is kind of what happens when he's told no.
He's not reacting very well.
Yeah, that's definitely the case.
Yeah, do I have some mods in the chat? Maybe Brian.
Oh no, somebody else is doing it.
It's him. It's him. He's got numerous stock accounts.
Oh
He has multiple stock accounts. Yeah.
That's insane.
Cool. I think I got a couple.
He's doing it again. What the? Another one. What the hell?
That's all right. Just keep going. Sorry. What did you? So you guys thought like okay. So there were a few things that. So let me address one thing that Skylar said, and sorry if I got some background noise. Right.
What the heck?
But so one thing Skylar said was that like, couldn't God have made a world in which like he said one thing, right? Like there was an example given by CJ, something about like um CJ, can you recall the example that he gave you for like, could God not create a world with this
Yeah, he was talking
where
about
people don't do this or that, something like that?
yeah, he was saying like how he can't like strangle somebody with his wings or grow wings and strangle
Yeah,
somebody, right? And
yeah.
I was pointing out, I was like, yeah, but you could totally do that with your hands unless we just cut them off, you know what I mean? And yeah, that's that whole one.
Yeah, okay. So what I was wanting to say to that is like you can play that game all day until so like couldn't couldn't all right, so you say, well, humans, freely chose to do this wrong, and so they're being judged. Well, couldn't God create them so that they couldn't do that wrong? Yeah, but then they chose to do this wrong. Well, couldn't He create so they didn't do that wrong? Yes. Until you get all the way to the point where they're no longer making free decisions. It's just they're, they would be wrong in any circumstance, basically, right? So it's like when you go down that farther enough, it's like, well, now they're not making free decisions. God's just creating people that do what He wants them to do automatically, like robotic, right?
Yeah.
So like that seems like a fair answer to that question, whether you're a theist or not. Like, how far does that go? Well, there's got to be some capacity to do otherwise if there's going to be freedom, right? And if there's not going to be freedom, that kind of negates the whole point.
Well, then that's even why I was kind of pointing out to him, it was like if you use that as an example, well, the only thing that prevents you from strangling somebody with your wings is the fact that you don't have wings. But, if we're talking about your actual will, right, you can still strangle somebody. You just got to find something else. You got to use your hands. You got to use your elbow, maybe, in the sense that you're like wrapping your arm around somebody's neck or something like that. You know what I mean? Or like, and we can start eliminating all of that. But, at that point, I mean, you just kind of become an amorphous blob, I guess. It is the other, potential answer. You're either just like the Stepford wife, or you're not like the person in any sense, right? Like, I mean, if you have feet, you can kick people. If you have eyes, you can lust after people who aren't your wife or husband. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
like it gets I guess it just gets ridiculous. Is my point.
Sorry about that. I thought I had some mods in here. Maybe I thought Brian Steven was a mod. Is that not? Maybe all my mods got taken off or something. Oh, Brian Stevens is a mod.
I'm a mod, and I haven't been on your channel for quite a long time.
Yeah, that's fine, dude. Patty, could you comment or something? And I'll make you, or never mind, I see you right there. I'm just gonna mod you up so that you can do.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Okay, so anyway, so yes, CJ, that's what I was kind of pointing out is like, so if you say, like, you can go all day with that. You can just go, well, what if they didn't have eyes and they couldn't lust? Well, then they got hands. Well, what if they didn't have hands? Like, all the way down to the point where it's like, well, what if they didn't have anything to do anything freely or choose otherwise? It's like, well, then that's kind of negates the whole purpose.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
Well,
so yeah.
You see, the reason I'm an atheist is I just don't believe in the core propositions. All this other stuff is extraneous.
Sure.
I just don't believe that man rose from the dead 2,000 years ago.
Sure.
And I just don't believe that.
So, Brenda, if you did believe that, do you think you wouldn't have any problems with this topic? Would you struggle with it?
With what topic?
Well, I think. Sorry, I was a little bit distracted. But I think we've generally been talking about the slaughter of these various peoples, like the Canaanites.
Or just biblical ethics, yeah.
Well, I would think that such a entity was evil.
Why?
So, if you believe Jesus Christ was God, you would think that this entity was evil. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, here's the thing.
Because he does evil. He does or instructs people to do things that I find abhorrent.
But and here's the thing, coming from, because you said you were atheist. Another atheist standpoint is that you say that they're evil, but why and what is your justification to say that your morality is more moral than those actions?
I don't know if it's more moral. I don't know how that would work. It's just the morals that I have say that the things that are described in the Bible are things that I find repulsive.
Are you
Yeah,
just
so
describing like emotional
Wait,
reactions to that?
so you're like an emotivist.
I don't think there are any moral facts. So I don't think there's such thing as objective morals.
Wait,
But
okay.
from my
Sorry.
point of view, right? There's things that I just find objectionable.
Well, that's just emotivism, right? It's not actually like grounded in anything particularly substantial. It's just like for you, that's icky. I'm not sure how you can claim it's evil, right? If there are no moral facts, because evil is like an actual statement of morality. It's something that's extreme, profoundly immoral. So you're essentially just an emotivist.
Well, no, I don't think I'm an emotivist, but that's how I'm choosing to use those words right now. I think I'm probably a moral relativist, right? I think morals are relative.
Emotivism is moral relative. Wait, no, is it?
It's not. No.
Well,
So-
yeah, it is. Not all moral relativism would be emotivism, but emotivism would always be moral relativism. Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
No.
Well, why not?
Cognitive emotivists would be non-cognitivists
Why?
because they don't think that it has any truth value, that moral statements have any truth value or anything. I think they have truth value in the sense that they're relative to my culture and my upbringing.
So hold on.
That would hang on. That's by definition relative. Like if they don't have any truth value, just like an opinion, that would literally be by definition relative.
I don't see why. I don't
Exactly.
see
So
how
motivist or relativist.
I don't see how emotivism is non-cognitive. Like I had to look up the word non-cognitive, right? But it says not relating to or based on conscious intellectual activity, not based on or capable. Huh?
Right. It's just a feeling of so if my reaction to say something that's rotted food would be purely emotional and non-cognitivist. Rotting food I just find repulsive, right?
Okay.
you just don't prefer it, right?
I don't prefer it. Yeah.
Yeah, and do you think that we should rely on our preferences when we are, say, judging a being like God or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you a question then. Say that somebody created chess, right? And everybody's playing the game of chess with the rules, like a rook moves like a rook, a bishop moves like a bishop, and you say, I don't prefer to move a bishop like a bishop. Do you think that is that matters if those are the rules in the beginning?
Well, then I would just be playing a different game.
Yeah, you're not playing chess, right? You're playing Smess or whatever, right? So, yeah.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm saying is like in reality, if it is the case that God exists and that these are the moral laws of the universe or whatever, it, as you said, like it just, I don't prefer it. It disgusts me or whatever. It you understand that wouldn't matter in that case, right?
Hey, real quick, guys. I just
saying-
gotta head out. But I appreciate you having me here, Converse.
Yeah.
Hi.
Thanks for
It was
coming by.
nice meeting you.
Yeah,
Are you saying that morality is like chess?
What was that?
Are you saying morality is like chess?
It's analogous in that way that I used it. I'm not saying that they're exact parallels or anything like that.
It's because chess is just a game. We made up the rules. We can change the rules.
Well, somebody made up the rules, right?
The rules for chess have changed during down history. En passant was not a legal move at one time, and now it is.
Yeah, and that in that case, like that's where the it would break down, right?
Right, or like in
Like it just changed the analogy.
like in baseball, you have the American League and the National League because they have different rules.
Yeah, I could just change the analogy to tic-tac-toe or something, right?
No,
Something that hasn't changed.
you could play a different game.
Yeah.
So if you're saying that morality is like a game that's just a bunch of rules that are made up, that's not moral realism.
Well, no, that's not exactly what I was saying. What I was saying is that everybody starts with an axiom, right? And so if the only way though to differentiate like a subjective axiom from an objective axiom is if there's some standard that created everything else, and everything is derivative from it. That's the only way there's an objective standard that everyone.
How does that work again?
Well, think about it. Like if you if let's say that a being, like let's say like God, right? There was nothing but God. God chose to create. Everything is derivative from God, and He created this world with a moral law, right?
Right.
That you ought to follow. And that, let's say, that's the purpose of human life, right? So that would be why it's objective to humans, is because there is no other standard to appeal to. But you could say, well, I just go with my human standard. But obviously that is just like some type of preferential thing. And you could easily say, well, it's because since the fall, everything's corrupted or whatever. And so you think that that's a good standard or whatever. But but as Christ said, it wasn't that way from the beginning.
So,
right?
so are God's morals based on God?
Yeah, I'd say God's nature. Yeah.
Yeah, they're His nature, or
I would say His nature is the standard.
Right. What if His nature was different?
Then it would be different.
Yeah, then it would be different.
Would it still be moral?
Yes.
So if God's nature was that completely the opposite of what He is now,
if that's possible,
then that would be moral. It would be moral to obey Him.
If that's
possible,
yeah.
Yeah.
If that were possible.
So I think that's monstrous.
Well, sure,
Wait,
but you
hold on.
think the same thing, except for your own view.
Exactly. You think the exact same thing. And so all that's happening, like this is what I was talking about earlier.
Your preferences were different.
Right. These are just preferences. And we're just talking about God's preferences.
Well, I'm not sure
why should I obey God's preferences?
Why should you obey your own preferences?
Right.
Because I want to.
Okay. so like look, this is what I was talking about earlier, right? Is that when questions like these are posed, they don't seem to be actually getting to something. They seem to be like more they seem to try to like invoke some sort of emotivism of the crowd or people listening. Like it's not actually about answering questions in regards to like what morality is, where it's derived from. It's just looking for a reaction.
No, that's not what I'm doing. So I think morals are relative to my culture, to my environment. I have the morals I have because I was brought up.
Wait, what morals are actually relative to your culture? Like what makes your culture distinct from others in terms of morality?
It might be some things as far as lying or something like that. There could be a culture where people do lie to each other.
What culture is that?
Well, there could be one.
Could be, sure. So which one's okay? Like, let's just grant that to be true, right? Can you tell me which one's actually valid? Which one's actually grounded in something substantial?
Neither of them are.
Okay.
That's the point. It's just relative to your culture.
So if there's go ahead, Converse.
Well, I was just going to ask, like, so if the culture agrees on their preferences, then it becomes moral? Is that what you're saying?
It becomes their agreement.
But does it become what is moral?
There aren't any objective morals.
I know, but well, hold on a second, because
agreement just makes it an agreement. It doesn't make it sort of it doesn't lift it up above the culture and make
right.
it.
But usually, what people tell me, the non-believers that are moral relativists, they'll say something like,
they're dumb compared to me. So.
Okay. Well, what they usually say is something like, "Well, no, it's the standard. The standard
I am kidding, by the way.
Yeah,
Just,
sure.
you
That's
know.
fine. Well, like usually what they'll say is like, yeah, so it's relative, but when we choose an axiom, we can make objective moral, we can test for objective moral things from that axiom. So if we agree that murder is wrong, then it is objective from that standpoint that it is wrong as an objective fact, because that's the axiom we start with. And so you wouldn't say the same thing?
Well, is ripping babies out of their mother's womb and killing them moral?
Who are you
I-
asking?
Yeah, that's kind of. Are you responding to that question that I had, or
That seemed to kind of come out of nowhere. But like, who are you asking?
Well, I'm just asking if you think that that's moral.
Well, but here's the thing, right? Like, really, the question shouldn't even be posed to us. It should rather be posed to yourself, right? Because you can't actually make that claim that it's immoral without something substantial to ground it in.
No, I don't have to. Number one, I know my preferences. They're grounded in my preferences.
Your preferences are meaningless.
so? Let me just ask the same
Not to me,
question.
they're not.
The same question you asked about God, right? If your preferences were that killing everybody on Earth for your personal gain was your preference, then it would be moral, right?
No, it was
Oh,
simply my preference.
Right, but aren't you saying that what is moral is your preference?
Well, you can call it that, but I
Yeah,
don't
well,
think
that's
it
what we're talking
really
about,
is. I don't
morality.
think you're sort of eluding between being something being objective and not being objective. I don't think morals. So, if you eliminate all the humans on Earth, do morals still exist? In my view, they don't exist.
Yeah, I understand that. So that's kind of what I'm.
You think they still exist?
Well, I would say the standards still exist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think they do. So
Okay.
I will happily lay my cards on the table. I think that the morals are relative to my culture, and I think that Christian morality, as far as I've been able to determine, is subjective because it's determined by a subject who is God.
Not.
It
Wait a
seems
second.
that everyone has a different definition upon what subjectivity means.
Well, there is a definition that philosophers use, and that's really not that is a standard use. So
now, okay. So even if you were to use this definition, I think it's faulty from the get-go. The reason being is that I don't think that you can like make some sort of, I don't think that you can, sorry, and I'm playing a game. I'm like halfway, my mind's halfway one way, other way. But like, I don't think that you can even make some claim like this about how, repeat what you said one more time.
Christian morality, especially divine command theology, which is usually what most people believe, is based on a subjective standard because God is a subject and it is his preferences, his opinions.
Okay, sorry. Now I get it. Let's grant that to be true, right? So we're talking about, at least in the terms of the Christian God, we're talking about an omnipotent, all-powerful being, right? That's actually grounded in something substantial. So it's not just preference.
Well, I'm not sure I understand.
Do you understand, Brenda? It's not about his feelings. It's about his nature.
So, the premise of that argument is predicated on God's existence, which still is not a thing that's been proven.
Right. We're just kind of doing an internal critique of each other's ethical approach.
No, I don't mind this. I don't mind
keep
at all.
saying
This doesn't bother me in the least bit.
Yeah, you can assume the other person's worldview to critique their ethical approach.
Right. Even I don't know why this keeps being said. Like, even if you were to, even whether you're granting God to be true or not is irrelevant. We're merely just like talking about it.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. So
no, it's not you. You're fine. You're fine.
So God exists, and He has opinions about how people should behave.
Are these
okay? I don't see why I should follow or agree with his opinions.
Yeah, see, that's what I would disagree with you there.
Yeah.
Right. What I would say is that So everything is derivative from God, right? The same way, like let's say this is just kind of like this. Obviously, no analogy is a one for one correlation, but I've used this before. Like, say I created a video game, and the rules are, you get to the like Mario, you jump over like the holes, right, and you hit the little things to get a mushroom, and you gotta like jump over the like little plants or whatever, and get to the end and slide down the flagpole. That's the rules of the game, right?
Yeah, but
And it doesn't matter what anybody subjectively thinks about it, because the creator, everything else is derivative from that being. It by nature is the standard of what humans will appeal to.
Yeah.
So when we talk about morality, we're talking about whether it's based on a subjective human stance, or whether the standard is beyond the human mind.
so does Mario have free will?
Does who?
That's I specifically said that no analogy is a one-for-one correlation. It's like when I bring up an analogy, you always try and pick like one part of it that isn't exactly analogous, and you miss the overall point that I gave about the rules of the game being objective, whether Mario or anybody. I can just qualify it by saying yes, it's a Matrix game where he's in the Matrix. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a game. I can question the rules of the game.
Well, no, that wasn't questioning the rules of the game, right? That was just asking, does he have free will in the game?
If we're in a world created by a deity, and the deity set the rules for this world, but I have a certain kind of free will, I can question those rules.
Oh yeah, I agree that you can question them. The difference is, like in the Mario game, you can say, "Why should I jump over this hole when I can just jump in it?" Right, and then you would be judged for it in the game by dying or whatever, right? Same way in reality.
Yeah, but yes, sure. I'm Mario. I get sent into the Mario world hell. I think it's unjust.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing, but that's just your preference.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not disputing that at all. I thought you were trying to dispute God's.
No, I don't see how that's moral, because you could just as easily make a different game where there's different outcomes with different rules.
Can I try this?
Yeah, go ahead. I got to go throw some clothes in the dryer, so I'll be right back.
Okay.
Domestic life.
Right.
Maybe it would be more useful to think about it sort of analogous to a physical law or something like that, in that in God's nature, we have the foundation for these moral laws. And perhaps you don't want to go to the flagpole. Maybe you do want to jump down the pit. And what will happen there is you will be judged as evil. And maybe you're comfortable with that and you're happy with being judged as evil, but it's just another dimension. And it's not something that you argue against or anything like that. It's just like, you can choose to jump off a building. You're not fighting gravity. You're just interacting with gravity in a particular way. And perhaps moral should be thought of that as well. Indeed,
I think I should be able to. Nature. I think I should be able to fly.
Okay,
that
so
doesn't give you
have a problem with the nature of reality,
right?
Well, I can object to the nature of whatever reality I'm in.
We agree with that.
You can object to it, right? But so like nobody's disagreeing with you that you can like that you can object to it. The issue is that the objection of it leads to, like, you know how like whoa, I can't tell if that sound is me. Does anybody else hear that, or is it me?
It's quiet for me.
My mic's off, so
I think it's Converse's dryer.
That was weird.
I think it's
weird. So like you can disagree with the nature of reality or the nature of something, but whether you disagree with it or not is essentially irrelevant to the outcome of what you do in response to that disagreement. Like if your response to the disagreement of gravity is to jump off a building because you're convinced you're going to float, like no, you're going to go splat on the pavement, right? Whether
exactly my point.
Yeah.
And you can be unhappy about that. That's fair.
Well, the point is that these are rules. In your case, in this case, we're imagining a world that's constructed by a being, and the rules are what they are because being wrote the world to be that way.
I don't think so,
therefore,
Brenda, because the morality is in God's nature. That's the foundation. It's not in the world. And so, since God's nature cannot change, it's not something that He arbitrarily chose. It is the nature of reality.
So what we're experiencing right now is this conundrum. I forgot what the question is called. There's an actual name for it, but it's essentially yes, the Euthyphro problem, the Euthyphro dilemma, right?
Euthyphro, yes.
Yeah, that's what we're going through.
Right. And so, are the things that the gods value valuable in themselves, or are they of value because the gods value them?
No, I know Nick.
And do you understand how my position is neither of those?
Yeah. Nick's debated this on my channel before, so
what do you mean? Your position is that they're valuable because God values them.
No, that's not my position.
Yeah, it is. You said it's His nature.
Yeah, that's the reason. It's not because God values them, but it's because it's consistent with God's nature. God's nature is the standard of morality.
So God's nature is not a value. It's what He is intrinsically.
Could God have a different nature?
If it was possible, yes.
Aren't your nature. You can value things that aren't your nature, like I could, sure.
Could it be in God's nature to have a different set of values?
But it's not about God's nature,
it's not about His nature.
No, I misspoke just now. It's not about God's opinions or about His emotions. It's about His nature.
Yeah.
And so it's not a value.
Yeah. So could He have a different nature?
Well,
if it was possible, yeah.
I don't think that makes sense. I think God is a necessary being. There is nothing that could cause any change in God.
Yeah,
conceptually.
I think to say that. Yeah, I was about to say conceptually you could say maybe, but in actuality it's kind of like a possible world versus an actual world, like what's possible and like logically and what's actually possible.
Right.
Well, then you'd have to show somehow that the world you're following are necessary, and they're not.
Yeah. So
they're just they're contingent on a being, in God.
So to say that it's God's nature is sort of putting a restraint on the omniscient and omnipotence of God, and saying that He's restricted to this specific group of morality as opposed to every other possible morality to be utilizing.
It's not a restriction. God's nature isn't a restriction. That's the foundation of reality. He's not limited by anything.
Well, he can't go against His nature, can he?
Right. That's not a limitation.
Yeah. So his nature.
It'd be a logical contradiction. It's just like it's not. If we have an athlete, it's not that the athlete is worse at being an athlete because he can't jump without jumping. There's no such thing as jumping without jumping.
Well, I didn't say jump without jumping, but
yeah, so it's not a limitation on
different values. He could
on God. If it's a logical contradiction, that's not a limitation.
What's the contradiction?
God determines, His nature determines reality. So there's nothing outside of God that imposes a limitation on Him.
Where's the contradiction if God had a different rule than, say, for instance, thou shalt not kill?
Well, the contradiction would be that God would have a different nature.
Yeah. So where's the contradiction?
So we could imagine, like, we could talk about different ideas that could be true, but ultimately there is something that is true. So there's two different ways that we can talk about this. We can talk about, there's this possible big G God, there's that possible big G God. There isn't those possible big G gods. We can talk about abilities, but that doesn't affirm that God's nature can change. God has one nature, it's unchanging. It's not restricted. It has no potency within itself. There is nothing that can change God's nature. It wouldn't make sense. He wouldn't be a self-existent being.
Nicholas, quick question. Are you Canadian?
Yeah.
Okay, I hear it in your accent.
How did you tell about?
Yeah, right.
How did you know about that?
I live in Michigan, so some people here have the same accent.
For sure, yeah. Actually, it's a feature called Canadian Raising, but it does exist in the States as well.
Yeah, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan.
Yeah. I was very interested because I've talked to people online for about 9 years now, and like talking to people all over the world, and people mention it all the time. And the first few times they're like, I don't say a boot. I don't say a boot. What are they talking? But you meet so many people that point it out, and you're like, okay, there's something going on here. And so I really looked into it. And yeah, Americans would say something a little closer to about.
About, yeah.
Yeah, instead of about. But that sounds weird to us.
Yeah, I've said that same thing to Nick when I first talked to him. I was like, I don't know about this, but are you from Canada?
Yeah, you should hear my coworker. He sounds so Canadian. He's a farmer, like from a small town area, and he sounds so Canadian. It's great.
Look at Strode, eh? Get you a twofer. I was watching something the other day, and that's what they were talking about, and they were like, you guys call a toboggan something like a nook or something?
I haven't heard that. We always call
like a beanie.
Oh, you're talking about the toque.
A toque, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, toque. Cotton hat is what some places call it, but yeah, we call it a toque here. Yeah.
I have
bunny
coworkers.
hugs. Have you heard of a bunny hug?
A bunny hug.
Yeah.
No.
I've never heard of that.
That's what we call it in sort of these prairie provinces here. That's what we call a hoodie. Is a bunny hug.
Oh wow! I have coworkers. Like one of my favorite coworkers at my job. He goes, "Hey-o," when he says hello. And he's not even Canadian. He's Michigan born. But you know, if you were born up north, you have a little bit more of a Canadian like accent. And occasionally I was talking to someone like just a couple days ago, and I had said economy, but I ended up saying economy. And I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. And I hear it when I talk, like I do have a little bit of it, but I'm like Detroit born. So I have like this Detroit, Michigan / native Michigan accent. It's wild.
Yeah, I hear it sometimes like, it's not borne out by the facts. It just isn't. Okay. What's up to Will Stewart? Just came in. Yeah. How you doing?
The conversation has gone sideways since I've joined.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I'll remove
Sorry, it was my fault. I tend to do that. Converse will tell you. I'll come into like rooms on Discord and totally just F them up.
Yeah. Patty is a mod for Doobie's political server. Politics server. Yeah.
I'm worse on there than I am here. Like I haven't said one cuss word, and that's just.
How do you do that? How do you do that? That place is poison.
Oh man. So I do it by yelling at people a lot and cursing. So good catharsis.
Brenda, we actually, Patty and I and other people, there's some other people on there that we actually go in there, and a lot of times, we'll get right back to you. And a lot of times we get to kind of like there'll be neo-Nazis or some crazy people in there.
Oh my God!
And we get to just go like, "You're lame. You're lame.
Right?
What's your argument? That argument's lame. That's the worst argument I've ever heard. Well, what about this? And just like, and then you end up finding out like after the conversation, they'll go, look, no, I agree with you. I was just kind of BSing and like
I was trolling.
And then you get to realize that this is like a 14-year-old kid, and he thinks that it makes him sound more mature if he says, if he's on there like cursing and saying all this crap about Jews and all this. So it kind of feels good sometimes when you talk them back down and they realize, oh yeah, I am kind of lame, but and then they just like, no, I was just trolling. So it's kind of fun sometimes.
That's a different game than older neo-Nazis. Older neo-Nazis that I've dealt with, they tend towards pragmatism and not good people.
Oh yeah, sure. And well, there's like the opposite view too. There's like the communist defenders of Mao and Stalin. And anyway, I'm reading Capital right now, so I'm going to save that. But go ahead.
They're tankies. They're tankies.
Yeah, tankies. Yeah, there's a lot of tankies on that. I'm going to do a couple of videos coming up soon about reviews of the Vosh's debates. I just think that like there's a couple that he just. I think that in general, it's a pretty good rhetoric, but he has a couple that are just so horrendous, his takes, that I definitely want to talk about them. Anyway,
I regard people like Vosh as like I don't know. Like, I truly feel like they're internet warriors at that point.
Yeah, I mean, his whole thing is about rhetoric, and it's just about like, I see Vosh so much do this. Last time I heard this argument, it was literally from a neo-Nazi. Dude, that says nothing about the argument. It's just like an ad hom to just say the argument's stupid, but you don't actually show why it's wrong or anything. And every time he does that, 3 or 4 times, a debate, and I'm just like, how can he not?
Wait, do you agree with Vosh's ideology or?
Oh no.
Oh.
No, I mean, yeah, I think there's some room for like worker co-ops in a capitalist system. But anyway, before we get into all that, I want to let Will say what he came in to say. That way, we don't get too far off. So go ahead, Will. Sorry about that.
So the reason why I wanted to come in and say something and hello after all is I come from a Calvinistic viewpoint theologically, and so Brenda was asking if God could possibly then therefore change his nature and the rules would be different. If that were part of God's nature, if he so chose to do so, that would be possible, yes, but God has already stated that he is unchanging and unwavering, forever was, forever will be the same. So the reality, if you believe that there is a God, right, and that is an if from the theistic worldview, then that's not a possibility simply because of the fact that God says it isn't, right? So as people who believe in that God and in the sovereignty of that God, you can't go outside of the parameters that God has placed. So
Why
if you
not?
were to think as creation, well, because God created creation.
Because?
So if you could think of it as ice skating inside a hockey rink, you don't have to care.
Yeah.
And in fact, in my worldview, that's what God has chosen for you.
Yeah.
So,
You're very convinced that God it has determined or predetermined my life for me.
He's predetermined the ice rink that you skate in.
Right.
So Proverbs says that a man plans his thoughts, but God, right, guides his steps, right?
Right. So I could be saved at the end of my life.
Sure, absolutely.
And you could be lost.
Absolutely.
So you have no idea if you're saved or not.
Sure, I do.
Well, as a Calvinist, you believe in preservation of the saints, right?
Correct. Right. So
I don't know what that means.
It just means that God will preserve. Yeah. So Christ said, of all the people that God has given me, of those I will lose none, basically.
Yeah, but
so I am part
that was
of the
predetermined.
elect,
and I'm sorry. Go ahead.
If I'm part of the elect, I will never not be a part of the elect. Right?
Yeah,
God will not allow me to fall away.
You don't know if you're part of the elect. That's the thing.
Absolutely. That's what sanctification and work through faith is for.
Yes, you could be part of the elect. Well, I really don't mean to. I don't mean to sound mean or blunt, but like, what's the point of saying the way you're responding?
Oh, sorry. Who was that for?
Yeah.
That was for the guy who's responding to the Calvinist.
Well,
Brenda.
Oh, you're talking about Brenda.
Me? You're talking about me?
Yes.
Well, the point is that he doesn't know that he's part of the elect.
Well, what's the point of saying that, though?
But I agree with you.
Yeah, so I don't think that it doesn't seem. It seems really strange to me, because most Calvinists I've met are very sure that they are they are one of the elect, but according to their own beliefs, that they really can't know that.
I don't know how many Calvinists you've talked to, but like, you can't know with absolute certainty if you are a part of the elect.
Well, I think that what most Calvinists would say is that, like, there's a verse in the New Testament that says the seal of salvation is the Holy Spirit coming on you. So I think they would say that like the Spirit testified to me that I'm saved or something like that.
I would imagine that Seitan Bruggencake thought he was part of the elect, but it turns out he wasn't, doesn't it?
What do you mean by that?
Not the elect.
What do you mean by that? He's still like a Christian, though, right?
Well, I don't know if he's part of the elect. He's been removed, hasn't he?
By who?
You haven't heard?
No, I haven't heard about any.
Yeah, he's been caught in. We don't know what it is. Some kind of scandal. My guess is some kind of sexual scandal.
Sexual scandals do not remove you from the elect, right? No one. Right.
I have a feeling. I have this feeling that it's not going to. It doesn't indicate very good things for him.
Well, as we've learned earlier, right? Like your emotivism is meaningless.
I'm not an emotivist. Stop calling me that.
Okay. Every time you say feelings or that you feel something, right? I'm going to assume that it's just emotivism.
That's what feelings are. They're emotions.
Can I address Brenda's earlier point about where he garners his morality from?
She.
Oh, my apologies.
You had mentioned that you garner your morality from your culture, correct?
Garner. I don't. That's
garner
my morality comes. My morality comes from how I was raised as a child by my parents and by my community.
Right, and that's true for you, correct?
Yeah, I think that's where my morality came from. Yes.
Okay. So are moralities superior than other moralities?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so a culture from, say, the rainforest who condones cannibalism, would that be immoral?
No.
So then how is God immoral for doing the things that he did in the current debate?
Oh, it's just, we use words, so it's just not my preference. I would not prefer to cannibalize somebody, and I don't prefer to tear out babies from their mother's womb.
Right, I don't think you can't call it immoral.
Yeah, I was just about to say, if that's the case, then does immorality exist? Does morality or immorality exist?
Not objectively, no.
If it's not objective, then it's your opinion.
No, it's not just my opinion, but it
absolutely is. Opinion is non-objective thought.
Huh? It's my. I'm sorry. What?
Opinion is non-objective thought.
Well, yeah, it's a person's subjective.
Right.
It's so relative.
If it's not objective, it's your opinion.
Right.
So we differ on opinion.
Yeah.
So Brenda, if I would like to capture you and torture you and kill you, and I could get away with it, should I do that? Would that be virtual?
I don't think you should, because I would not like that.
However, but for me though, think about my situation.
You might find somebody who is into that, and then you two should get together.
I should. Okay, that's where I was asking. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. If y'all condone anything, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's why I asked earlier, Brenda. Do you think that? So it seems to me that what you find is moral is what your preferences are. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, pretty much.
So would it not follow that if you, an entire group of people, let's say a whole nation, let's say the nation of Brentopia or whatever, all had the same preferences on some issue, moral issue,
right?
Wouldn't it then be moral in that nation to do or not do?
It would be in their lights, but it isn't
in
any kind of objective sense.
Yeah, but you could make, so like I said before, like typically what people say is that I can make an objective observation of a fact from starting with that axiom. So if I believe that it's, if me...
I don't understand.
So they would say something like, if we start with the axiom that it's wrong to murder, then it's an objective fact that it's wrong to murder, regardless of human opinion in our society.
No,
now, I disagree with them, but I'm just asking what you think.
That doesn't work. You can't make values out of facts.
Yeah, I agree with that, actually. I was just saying that, yeah. So I was just seeing if you agreed with that, because this guy I argued with the other night on Discord, he was saying that good just means that it does what I want it to do. And he says, like, well, when I say a car is a bad car, I'm saying because it doesn't do what I want it to do. And then I said, well, like, you're equivocating on the term good, because when we say somebody's a good guy, we're not saying that he did what we wanted him to do. We're saying that he's a moral person, where a car not doing what you want it to do is good, in the sense of like I could say that's a good way to get yourself killed. It doesn't mean it's a moral way to get yourself killed, right?
Well, I might want to get myself killed.
Right, I know, but I'm saying that statement doesn't indicate that it's a moral way, right? Saying it's a good way. And that's the way that he was equivocating on the term.
I don't think there are any goods out there either. Good is just a relative term. It's relative to my wants and my desires, right? So a tool is good only in as much as it serves as me being able to achieve what I want. So a hammer that's a bad hammer that isn't any good for hammering in nails anymore.
Yeah, so let's say,
but it might be useful for something else.
Let's take that example like a hammer, right? Would you say that it's objectively true that the purpose that a hammer was created for is to hammer nails or something like that?
It's not. No.
Okay, because I would say the purpose of a hammer is to hammer nails or to hammer something.
I don't think that it is a quality that is inherent in the hammer.
Well, I wouldn't say that either. I would just say that the purpose is an objective truth, that the purpose of the hammer is.
Yeah, but I can use
imparted into through the developer, the inventor of the hammer.
Yeah, but somebody made this hammer to pull out nails and to hammer in nails, but I use it as a paperweight.
Right. Yeah, I understand that.
I've never used it for its intended purpose. But am I using it wrong? I'm not. I'm not using
it. Yeah, so let's say like a garage door opener, right? It was like the objective purpose it was created for is to open a garage door. But you use it to hammer nails. And it doesn't really work that efficiently, but that's your preference. Do you think that there's an objective difference between those two?
No.
Okay. Yeah. So I would just disagree. I think like it's an objective truth that a garage door opener is for garage doors.
So there's objective facts about things. So I like chocolate ice cream. So it's an objective fact that I like chocolate ice cream.
Sure.
But there is no objective fact that chocolate ice cream is
what you should want, right?
What I ought to want.
Yeah.
Right. It's simply my preference is for chocolate ice cream. If I'm given a choice between vanilla chocolate, I'm going to choose chocolate. In this hypothetical, there's times when I might actually choose vanilla, but in the hypothetical, I would choose chocolate, and that's simply a preference of mine, and it's a preference of mine that I would choose not to enslave people.
Sure.
And God is cool with that, so I have a problem.
You know that's not true.
Brenda,
he's cool with it.
Can I ask you, do you think it would be better if there was an objective morality, something that united us? So even if I wanted to capture and torture people, that there would be a reason why that was wrong.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that would be better. I don't understand how that kind of world would work, because then it would mean that some things, like some moral statements, are true even if there's no people around anymore. I think that it's
yeah, but I mean, I think even in your system, we can talk about your kind of morality in situations that are not true. So we could make statements about what it would be moral for humans to do if they existed, just like we could talk about what it would be moral to do if you had a son, you know. But you don't have a son, right? So I think we could still talk about those things as being true or false because they have to do a certain.
I don't see it because I can imagine, say, other societies that have different morals from mine and that they work just fine. There could be a society where people have very different morals from mine, but the people in that society prosper and get along just fine, and they don't run into any problems in the world. They just have different values than I do, and I don't see what the big deal is with that, because there might be some values that they have that I would object to, and I would wish that they would do better, do differently, but that's not.
How about if we imagined you and you being differently ordered and having a different nature and liking different things?
I'd be a different person.
You'd be a different person, yeah. And can you imagine, like, would there be a difference in value there? Like, if you were a horrible, the sort of person that you would call horrible now, if you were instead that sort of person, is that worse or is that just different?
If I was born a sociopath and I had a bunch of bodies buried in the backyard,
That's a great example.
Don't think that wouldn't be me, and that would be somebody other than me, and I'm not sure I can understand how that person lives.
I got to follow up really quick, Converse. Okay, that makes sense that you can't think about yourself in that position. But let's say that we talk about the world, and there's a different person in your place, and it's the sort of sociopath that buries bodies in the backyard. Would that world be a worse place, or would it just be different?
Well, I happen to think that sociopaths. Well, it depends on. I happen to think that sociopaths kind of are parasitic on their culture. They can't survive on their own. I don't think a country of sociopaths would actually work. I think it would fall apart. But
I think you may be conflating sociopath and psychopath.
I don't know that there's much difference. They seem the same to me.
There's a huge difference. So sociopaths. Sorry.
The thing is, Patty, is that I don't know what your background is, and yes, there are different academic definitions, but in common parlance, often they're used interchangeably.
I know that they're used interchangeably, but like, it's really not. I'm sorry, I really hate to be that person, but it's like, it's if you're like conflating these two things, then it's definitely something to argue about, in my opinion.
Well,
so like sociopaths don't lack like morality. They just don't consider it as much as like neurotypical people do.
Okay, well,
psychopaths are the ones who like have no moral like leaning at all.
True, Patty. But I'm not sure it's totally helpful to the conversation we're having right now.
Sorry.
Well, I think that. I tend to agree with, like, I don't know if you're familiar with Sam Harris and his moral landscape.
Yeah.
I tend to agree with Sam Harris on all the particular parts, which is, I think that, like he says, there are experiences that really and truly suck. And I can't imagine being a being that actually enjoys sticking my hand into fire. So sticking your hand into fire for humans really sucks. I mean, it's really objectively a sucky experience. But Sam's objective, and he's wrong. It's subjective because sucky experiences are subjective because they're experiences of a subject. So I can agree with all the moral landscape stuff that we should, that I think that we ought to work for human flourishing, and that there are, then once we decide we want to encourage human flourishing, there are objective ways of achieving that goal, but the goal itself isn't objective. And the moral landscape is not a case for objective morality. It's a case
Yeah, I agree with that.
for subjective morality.
Yeah,
That's where I'm at.
Question where
That's where I'm at with that. So I would say that. So for instance, the sociopath, I don't think sociopaths get humanity to flourish.
Why wouldn't sociopaths care about the continuation of humanity? It would literally benefit them.
They only care about themselves, though, right?
No.
Yeah, but I think Nick's point was a really good one about is the sociopath and the person like you, Brenda, are they just different positions, or is one an improvement?
And the worlds, I think, matter as well. I think theologically it's really important to talk about whether or not the world's a better place or not, whether or not it's Brenda or this single sociopath that buries not a whole nation that's going to break down all humanity, but one that's going to get by just fine.
The world it's not going to make a bit of difference to the world. I mean, the sun is going to expand, and this earth is just going to be a cinder, and that will be the end of humanity, and that's it.
And that's not worse than now. It's just different. Is that right?
That's just what happened. There isn't anything moral or immoral about the fact that eventually this earth will be consumed by its sun, right?
And there's no value to it, right?
Is what
Other
it
than
is.
personal preference, then it's just a nihilistic world. Who cares?
Yeah, I think what Nick's saying is, and I think this is a good point, is that if you look at a moral take, right, killing or murder is fine and murder is not fine, and then you ask, are those just different views, or is one an improvement? And if you don't have an objective standard to move toward, you can't say objectively that it's an improvement. You can just say I prefer it.
Right.
I think killing is fine in certain circumstances. If somebody's
we probably do too.
If somebody's going to kill me, I would rather it be them than me.
That's why I said murder, because it's unjustified.
Right. There's a distinction.
By the way, Brenda, I just want to say I feel like you've been really consistent with the position that you're trying to espouse here, and
I'm
that
trying.
you've been going along with the entailments, and I really appreciate it.
I think you've been very honest.
You have.
To begin with, I don't feel like I'm settled on my moral beliefs because I feel like I'm still in process of that. So there are other candidates that I've considered for a type of morality. For instance, there's what's called a social contract theory. But I've been told by people that are smarter than me that doesn't work into an objective moral belief system. But
yeah, because social constructs are based on culture.
Yep.
Social constructs are based on societies and culture, and all of that is relative.
Well, not with Rawlsian social contract theory. It's based on being behind the veil of ignorance and making a rational choice behind the veil of ignorance. So that is purportedly supposed to be objective, but I'm not 100% sure that it is.
Can I ask another question about something that you had mentioned earlier, Brenda?
So go ahead.
You had mentioned earlier that why should you care, right? If if there is a God, and if I choose not, why should I choose to follow him?
If the world is the Christian world and the God is the Christian God, I would give him the finger from hell.
And that's fine.
Why?
But my question is
because I think he's evil.
Okay.
So your problem, and this is the question that I really wanted to get towards, is I think that your problem is that you feel as though it is unjust for God to judge you based on your choices, correct? Okay, so taking that same logic that you used earlier of how your morality was formed, right? So say that your particular household and how you were raised had a slightly different morality than the culture that you lived in as a whole. Is it then unjust for that government or culture to judge you based on your choices? So, for instance, in America, in the United States of America, it is illegal to murder someone. Is that an unjust judgment?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm aware that that is a standard argument used against the relativist position, and I'm not really sure. Yeah, I don't know.
Because and I'm not saying that you are still capable of murdering someone, correct? There's no one watching you 24/7 to prevent you from doing that, right? You are still capable of doing that. And if you take that action, you are therefore guilty, not necessarily in your own eyes.
I don't think I am.
In the,
to be honest,
right,
to be honest with
in
you,
the eyes of the
culture.
Right now, I'm saying hypothetically. I'm not saying you specifically that you're capable. I'm saying that you are. There is no one. You are not chained to your wall.
Throw up. I know I would.
Sure, I understand that, but I'm not saying you're not physically restrained from doing so, right? You are capable of it. You may not be emotionally and psychologically capable of it, but you are physically capable to do it, right? You have the bodily function in order to make that happen in some way or another, right? If you have a finger, you can pull the trigger. If you can drive a car, you can hit someone. But my point is that because the culture has set an objective standard, right? Regardless of whether your standard is objective or not, the culture that you lived in has made certain things objectively right and wrong. And if you commit a crime, you are punished according to the objective rules that the culture has set. And that's the exact type of objective morality that God has placed upon people who believe that God exists.
My culture's morals aren't objective. They're just relative to my culture. And God's
culture has placed objective consequence for that.
Yes, they've placed real consequences. But if I was back, a couple hundred years ago, I would object strongly to the culture of racism and slavery, and I would feel it was unjust, even though it was.
How do you know that?
Well, I mean, I'm supposing myself being transported back there, so I have already these morals formed.
Okay, but say you were born back then.
Well, then I might be, that would be a matter of happenstance about whether I like to think that my personality is such that I would have been very liberal and very, and there were quite a few liberals who objected to the system of slavery. There were quite a lot of people.
Most of those were Calvinist Christians.
Well, I don't know what most was. I don't know.
Not that's a huge.
I don't know who was most.
Pin on Calvinists, and that if you're not a Calvinist, you're culpable in slavery. That's not my intent in making that comment. It just happens to be the nature of.
I have no idea. But the point is, I would like to think, if I was born 200 years ago, it wouldn't be me.
Brenda, I've got a thought experiment for you. Okay, so you live your life with all the knowledge that you have right now. You get to the end of it, you die, and surprise, at the end of your life, when you thought it was all going to be just lights out, you end up at the pearly gates, and there's Jesus, and Jesus says, Brenda, I'm sorry because of all of these reasons, this, and this, and it totally makes sense to you. You're like, oh, those are good reasons. I wasn't able to deliver the gospel to you in a way that you would hear during your life. So now I'm going to give you the opportunity. I know you're really against the whole Christianity thing. I will repair your broken spirit and bring you into eternal happiness. Would it be better for you to accept Jesus' offer or to go to hell and give God the finger?
Well, I'm assuming that I have the facts as they are straight right now. And so I don't see anything changing. I would need an explanation from him for all the crimes that he committed in the Bible.
What if he told you after he repairs your broken spirit, you will understand all of this?
I don't know what that means, repairs my broken spirit. I don't know. It
well,
sounds
let's say that your
I'm turned into a robot. I'm turned into a robot.
Not a robot. Nope. Into a perfected human being. Into the perfect Brenda, the absolute Brenda that you ought to be.
The absolute Brenda would give him the finger.
Okay. Yeah, that's exactly my point. Okay, so that's the thing, is that you're saying that it's better to give him the finger. But that's not what would be better for you emotionally speaking. You would be much happier if you were brought into this eternal happiness.
I'd be happier if he wasn't such a dick.
Well, my point is that your morality that you're talking about, even though you try to reduce it to emotions, it's clearly not based on emotions.
Well, you haven't shown me that. You haven't demonstrated that.
Yeah, I just gave you the option of being in hell and giving God the finger, or having eternal joy. And you said, I'll give God the finger because that's better. You're not saying you would enjoy that more.
Mm-hmm. No, I would definitely not enjoy being in hell.
Yeah, so you're pointing to something deeper than just your feelings and your emotions. You're saying it would be a good thing to give God the finger.
So do you know who Pine Creek is?
I've heard the name. I don't know.
Yeah. Here's a nice little thought experiment. So I'm up at the pearly gates, and Jesus is there, and you are there, Nicholas.
Oh, I was wrong about a lot of things. Oops. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Nick.
And you are there, and I suggest to God, and God agrees with this, or Jesus says, how about if you just poof me out of existence? Right?
I'm following so far.
Right? So would you accept that?
I'm confused. So we're both there, and you're asking to be poofed out of existence. You're asking for annihilation.
No. Let me see. How does Doug put it?
I think what Brenda's trying to say is that it's like, I think what Doug says is that you're at the pearly gates, Brenda's there, and that one person, like you're supposed to, like, would you give up your place for Brenda to be there or something like that?
Oh, yes,
right?
That's right. That's how he puts it. Yes, yeah. That's right. I'm sorry. It took me a little while.
Yeah, it's not a Christian concept, because as Christ said, of the ones I will not lose one. So
yeah, but he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah,
he's
sure.
not confined by
your
Christian.
Yeah, he's not a Christian. He's a theist. Yeah.
The Christian principle would be, though, to say
yes. He's still going to be there, though. He's still going to be there. And would you let me take your place in heaven, and then just have you poofed out of existence?
Well, I'm really confused, because the scenario that you're suggesting, it does not conform with any Christianity that I'm aware of, and so I'm having trouble imagining this worldview. But if you ask me right now, would I damn my soul so that you could serve God and loyally be with God?
You don't have to be damned. You just go poof, and you're
poof.
not tortured.
Okay, yeah.
If tortured, you just go. Psh,
I would not take that deal. I think it's my duty to serve God. And I don't think that choosing to be annihilated so that you can serve God instead is serving God. If God told me to do it, I would do it. But I don't see that as a good thing. So I wouldn't do it.
Not. Once I'm in there, I'm not serving God. Trust me on that.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't be there then, right?
This is
Brenda. One point that I wanted to make that I kind of noticed here is that, like, with this line of reasoning, it did kind of like illustrate a point, right? And so, like, one thing I would say is that if it's true that if it is the case, just say that God exists and God is what Christians say God is and all this, right? Then God is an absolute perceiver, which means he knows all true facts and so on and so forth. Now, we're limited perceivers. And you're saying with the facts that I know, I wouldn't choose God or whatever. But but I know you've heard this analogy before. Say that like you heard the facts that a man is sticking a knife into the chest of a little baby girl. You might say that's evil, but if you know that he's performing heart-saving surgery and you have everything as God does, then it instantly becomes not evil because now you are an absolute perceiver. You know all that there is to know, and it seems like, just as the Bible says, lean not on your own understanding. God's ways are not our ways, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but that seems to be a really thin branch to go out on, because you're just presupposing that God is making the right choices, and you're just,
What do you mean by right?
According to that, I would find them. Not find them objectionable, right? I would not find it objectionable that he slaughtered the Canaanites.
Well, that's kind of the point.
We don't have any choice but to consider it right, in line with God's nature, in line with the way that we describe God's nature, at least for Christians, right? We don't have any choice but to say it is right.
Yeah, Brenda. So you know how you think it's ridiculous, the whole story about the Nephilim, and that there was a Nephilim amongst their descendants amongst the Canaanites and so on and so forth. Now I'm saying, consider that is actually in reality the case. But you don't think it is, because you're going off of basically what you know.
I know it's not. I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you be wrong about that?
No.
Or you objectively can't be wrong about that.
I can't be wrong about it, because this.
Yeah, I don't think that's a claim that you can justify.
Yeah, I can, because in this universe you can't have 15-foot tall humans.
I would never claim that.
Wait, I would never make that claim.
Yeah, nobody's ever made that claim.
So we live in a world.
Has not been found.
I don't know, but like say we were to say like just grant what Brenda said, like we know, right, that millions of years ago or whatever, the dinosaurs were like taller than were as tall as almost as tall as the Empire State Building because of oxygen levels, right? So how can you make an absolute claim about the height of people?
Because of physics, it just doesn't work.
Well, Brenda, nobody's made that claim though, Brenda. It actually gives a height for biblical giants like Goliath, for example, right?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it's not. Nobody would say 50 feet. We would say probably somewhere around 9 foot, something like that, right?
Well,
so in that case,
15.
So have you seen the picture of the world's tallest man when he was 9 foot tall?
No, that's not the case, is it? I thought it was a 13-foot man.
Oh yeah, hold on.
The tallest man who's ever lived has only been about 9 feet tall. No human has ever been 13 feet tall.
So
okay, I could be incorrect about that, but
the world's tallest man was Robert Wadlow, and he was like 8 feet 11 inches or something.
Yeah.
Really close to 9.
Yeah, so that's why I said that the dimensions given of Goliath in the Bible are less than 9.
He was crippled. He couldn't have led any kind of. He needed medical care. He needed braces. Yeah.
Yeah,
it doesn't work.
But that's still talking. But that's still.
Yeah, hold on a second. You're keep in mind. You're
dying on a hill that you don't need to die on.
Well, no, I think you are, because you're making a claim that you couldn't be wrong when I can give you an enormous amount of examples, like endless examples of, okay, instead of being a giantism disease as this guy had, right? They had genetic, something was going on with mixing genetics or something, or God, these supernatural beings that fell It just happened to be the byproduct, and it is possible. And like there's endless possibilities of how it could be possible. And you said for a fact that it couldn't be possible, and you can't justify that.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, you can't. You couldn't possibly justify that because then you could just be wrong. I think about young Earth creationists when they say,
triggered, like now, because.
Well, no, I just think that it just makes me think of young Earth creationists when they go, the world couldn't be billions of years old, and I know that as a fact, and that just sounds like what you're saying. It's like
Here, can I offer up a line of thinking, right? So Brenda, would you say that it was totally possible or even a fact that oxygen levels millions of years ago were different and probably higher, right, than oxygen levels today?
A very long time ago.
But is that possible, or is that possible, or is it a fact? Like, it doesn't matter. You can say it's both, and I'm still going to use the line of reasoning.
As I understand it, there was a period in Earth's history where there was more oxygen, and apparently, the theory
everything was bigger because of it.
Insects were larger.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's say that there were people like people who lived back then, right, who existed back then. And let's say because of those conditions, it's totally possible for someone to naturally grow by virtue of like how we understand genetics, by virtue of how we understand bone structure and density in response to our environment, right? It's totally possible for someone to be naturally tall, right, and not have it be a defect. And this not violate the laws of physics at all.
No, I don't think that works because...
Okay, how would being tall violate the laws of physics?
Because it violates structural laws that the strength of like a femur, the surface area and the volume increases with the cube, while the surface area only increases with the square. So it's the cube law for volumes.
So how did it work for a Tyrannosaurus Rex or some other giant?
Like T-Rexes had femurs.
Yeah, they weren't humans though.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that's yeah. Easily, you can see how that doesn't.
Yeah,
you could easily think.
Elephants are tall. Elephants are really big, but that we're not supposing that these people, these individuals were elephants.
Okay,
right?
let me use another example. Right? Have you ever seen one
that humans couldn't have evolved in the way that, in that same way to be that height? Although we're just saying 8 to 9 foot tall. You don't think that a human could be that 8 to 9 foot tall and be healthy?
It's not possible.
I just disagree with you.
Human, it's not physically possible according to the mechanics of how things work, because surface area increases with the square and the volume increases with the cube. So if you have a cube or a cylinder that is one size and you double its size, the volume increases as the cube and the surface increases at the square, or the other way around. I don't know which, but either way.
So if you had a body that size, it would need to be made of sterner stuff than most humans, right?
Right, and so it would need to be.
But you're asserting that this isn't possible.
It would need to be different, like an elephant different.
Okay, so I said
not a human, not even close to a human.
Okay, Brendan. So I said 8 to 9 feet, right? And our tallest basketball player is 7'9", almost 9 feet, and is an athlete.
Yeah.
So you think it's impossible for somebody to be another few inches taller than that and be?
No, it's impossible for him to be 9 feet tall.
Well, I didn't say necessarily 9 feet, right? Like, that's not a claim I made.
So you're saying that the Nephilim were 7 feet tall?
Well, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that what we know of the time is that the average height of a person was shorter than it is now. So it was around 5 to 5.5 feet, depending on if you're in Egypt or if you're in Israel, in that area. And so,
Floriensis was like a little 3 foot tall. They're a little
yeah. So if
tiny.
you've
There were
seen a
different
person,
species. How do you account for the fact there are different species of humans only a few 100,000 years ago?
what does that have to do with this? How's that relevant?
Well, it is a different subject. You're correct. That's
yeah.
right.
So I would just say that we have a basketball player right now that's 7'9", easily a giant to the people that lives in that time frame and is functional. The whole point wasn't, do you believe that? It was just that, is it? So if you take that, for example, it was the same thing that, like what we were trying to get at earlier, is that if you don't have all information of something like the man sticking the knife into the chest of the little girl, it might sound evil, right? But it could just be that you're, as the Bible would say, leaning on your own understanding, and that you don't have that absolute perception. And could it be possible that God has a better perception than you do on the things that you think are wrong about God?
Well, in this universe, in this world, but you can't have a human that's much above 8 foot tall. And you're saying that there is one basketball player who is 7'9", then you're going to have to limit yourself to 7'9" Anunnaki, or however you say that word.
The Anunnaki is not from the biblical story. That's from the Sumerian text.
Well, whatever
I get what you're saying.
giants are, I don't know why, because your salvation doesn't hang on this. So I don't see why you need to.
No. This was completely just an example to say that, like, you saying that that something couldn't be possible, the same way you say, like Nick's example, if you're in front of God and you would choose to give God the finger or whatever, based on and you said, based on my understanding, if I have the knowledge that I do now of what God believes and does or whatever, then I would. And I'm saying, well, why would you do that when your understanding is so limited to an absolute perceiver, even to like an alien that has let's say 3% more knowledge than you do about the world? You would seem silly to do.
I don't care if those aliens are super intelligent. If they go around ripping babies out of mothers' wombs, I think I'm not going to like that, and I'm going to judge them as being evil bastards.
Yeah, no, this is more about your relying on your own understanding than your moral take on an alien view.
What else I can rely on, but my own understanding.
Brenda, do you think it would be ridiculous for somebody to claim that Christianity must be true because people couldn't possibly be a few inches taller? Wouldn't you laugh at somebody for taking that position?
Christianity must be true.
Yeah, because people couldn't be a few inches taller. Like, that would be a ridiculous stance to take, right? And say, listen, I know Christianity is true because there's no way there could be somebody that's 8 feet tall.
Yeah, I don't.
Ridiculous, right?
That seems like a non sequitur to me.
Well, okay, but I'll show you why I'm bringing it up in just a second. Would you answer the question? Wouldn't it seem ridiculous?
Yeah, it seems ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, but it seems like you're saying Christianity can't be true because people can't be a few inches taller.
Oh, I'm saying Christianity can't be true because it says there were people who were blah blah height, apparently at a height which we know to be physically impossible. Therefore, it is saying something that is objectively false.
Well, Converse, in his most what's the word? A conservative measure, I think, said 8 feet, and I think Patty mentioned earlier that
and Goliath was even
8 feet.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, there's other objections that are based. So, the sun having stood still for a certain amount of time, that couldn't have happened either. That didn't happen. It's mythology. It didn't happen.
So you're saying that even if there's a being that created the sun, the laws of physics and everything, that being could not possibly make the sun stand still?
Oh, if you want to invoke magic, sure.
Well, no, not magic. Just if that being created the laws of physics.
Doesn't the sun always stand still, to be clear?
Yeah. Well, you mean the Earth stops?
No, it actually wobbles a little bit.
The Earth would need to stop rotating. Yes, the Earth would need to stop rotating. If we understand the passage correctly, the Earth would need to stop rotating. That can't have happened, and nobody else observed it. There's no writings. You would think people in China would notice it. They
You
didn't
see,
know.
that makes a lot more sense. That second part of what you're saying makes a lot more sense. But the first part and saying that it couldn't happen when it's a supernatural story, that doesn't make any sense to me. Why couldn't God stop the world from turning
He
and not
could.
have all these other effects that we would
Yeah,
usually
you
have?
want to invoke miracles. You want to invoke miracles, but then you're just throwing.
Don't you think it's a miraculous story to begin with?
But you're invoking a miracle, and invoking a miracle nullifies physical laws.
Well, it doesn't nullify them, but it shows that
it
perhaps
does.
there could be exceptions to them, right?
It defies them. It doesn't nullify
There
them.
aren't
And
exceptions.
I think
Laws
embedded
don't
in that
have
story is that
exceptions.
assumption. And so
Laws-
are you only saying that it's my assumption that God doesn't exist and therefore supernatural things can't happen?
If there's an exception to a law, it's no longer a law.
Well, wait a second, because think about it like this.
I mean,
Okay, so say that. Wait a second, because I think that this is the wrong way to approach it. Because it's like if an apple drops from a tree and it hits the ground 100 times out of 100, but an agent introduces its hand and it doesn't hit the ground, we're not saying the law of physics has been broken or the law of gravity has been broken. We're saying something else was added into the system. It's like in a video game, right? If you wouldn't just if I wanted to cheat, I couldn't break the laws of the game, but I could use a mod chip that gave me some type of advantage, right? But I'm not changing the game at all. I'm just altering what I'm capable of or something like that.
Yeah, that's what mods do, is they change the game.
Yeah, well, no, not the actual reality of it, right? Like the same way with the apple example. But if gravity always brings an apple from the ground to the ground, and 9.8 meters per second squared, but an agent introduces his hand. Same way with Christ. If Christ walked on water, just imagine God putting his hand underneath Christ's feet. He's not breaking the law of gravity, right?
I think you're still subject to Hume's objection that miracles are violations of natural laws, and such a violation nullifies
critiqued. That's been critiqued multiple times. I think Hume is completely wrong.
You did it here. I don't think that your example was successful.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what I said about the apple tree is one of the ones that like Linux and others gives, is that if something like that were to stop what typically happens, it's not necessarily because the law of gravity was broken, but it was because an agent added in something to the system external.
Yeah. So
to the same system,
the law no longer applies. So
Wait.
we think that laws like the laws of gravity and the laws of electricity and such are inviolable. There are no exceptions to them. And if you introduce an exception, it's not a law anymore.
Wait a second. That doesn't break the law. It's something new added in. So, for example,
manipulation.
Like I said, with Christ walking on water. Wait a second. Let's take an example like Christ walking on water. Instead of making it so that gravity doesn't apply to Christ, as you're putting it, say God just put his hand under Christ's feet every step he took. He's not breaking the law of gravity. He's adding in something to hold up Christ. Let's just use that as an example, right? That doesn't break the law of gravity.
Yeah, right? It does, because the universe is causally closed, and so he's interfering with the causal order of events.
Wait a minute.
That doesn't break the law. Yeah.
If you were to walk on water, and I would put my hands under your feet, right, to keep you up on the water, am I breaking the law of gravity?
No, you wouldn't be.
Okay, so
but God would be, you're saying,
because these are like, I imagine that they're spiritual hands, and they have no mass. They don't displace the water. They're not supporting your weight by.
Wait, how do we know that they didn't displace water?
Well,
are you just assuming that?
Can I ask a question from another point of view?
Yeah, go
ahead. So we're assuming, right, in this thought experiment, we're assuming that God exists, correct? So if you're assuming that the God of Christianity exists, the God who created everything, would it then be illogical to say that God could not perform what human eyes see as supernatural events?
if you have a supernatural being of omnipotent powers, he can do anything. But the consequence then is that we can't deduce any kind of laws or regularities in nature, because it just all falls apart, because the laws and regularities are depend on them being there not being exceptions to them. And so if there's exceptions, then it's no longer a law.
Yeah, see, I just don't think that the law breaks because of something like that. Like, I think that, I think that God, when God acts in nature, God acts, in a natural way, right? Like instead of God just coming here as a spirit and doing what Christ did, he came at what the Bible calls in the flesh, right? Like if I create a video game and I'm in reality and that's a virtual reality, I can't enter virtual reality as this type of being because it just doesn't make sense to do that.
But you're breaking physical laws, like the laws of conservation of mass and energy, and the fact that the universe is causally closed. If God
you're saying God's restricted by those.
I'm not saying
if
he's not
restricted by them, then he's not God.
Well, yes, no, I'm admitting that he could do that, but then what you're saying is that those laws of the laws of thermodynamics, the laws, conservation laws, no longer apply.
Yeah, Brenda's just saying that if something were to happen out of the usual, that it breaks the laws and that the laws no longer apply. And I'm arguing that is not the case. It doesn't follow at all. It's non-sequitur.
Does it actually break the laws, or does it just break our perception of what the laws are supposed to look like?
Yeah.
Well, so the point is, if God can interfere and break physical laws like conservation of energy and mass and things like that, then no future and we know that no future observation that we make, we could never be sure that it wasn't simply a one-off by God.
Unless we believed in the trustworthiness of God and that he had set us up in a world that we could understand. And
apparently he's not trustworthy since he's interfering.
I don't think that anybody that saw Jesus walking on water was like, oh no, I can't trust that if I step on water, I'm going to float, or I'm going to sink.
That seems like a leap. Like if he's interfering, you can't trust him. That seems like a leap.
Well, the laws, you can't trust the laws. He made the laws. Do they apply or don't they?
They generally apply in a trustworthy and predictable way. Sometimes God.
Besides, in the original story, it's you just believe. You just have faith, and you can walk on water.
Well, Peter tries. Yeah. He has the faith to try, but then he falls. No, he steps out into the water and then he sinks into the water. Jesus has to save him.
He goes for
typical for Peter.
he succeeds for a little while, but then he starts to flounder. He doesn't go under.
Well, I don't think it's clear about that at all. But my point is that, like, obviously people that believe in miracles don't and believe in this trustworthy God don't believe that the God causing a miracle means that we can't predict things in the future. Well, like I don't think that when they saw the sun stop that day, they're like, oh no, is the sun not going to set tomorrow? They knew what was going on.
Well, they have no reason to believe the sun would set the next day.
I think they do, because it didn't set that day. Which God stopped it.
That God could stop it the experience is that God could stop it at any point for any reason.
Absolutely. So that's why
but he would only
work out your faith and fear and trembling.
Yeah, so you can't know that the sun will rise in the morning because God could stop it at any time.
Well, you can't know the sun will rise in the morning through induction anyway, without God.
Well, I can use induction. I can know. I can base.
You can't know that. You can believe that. No, there's no way to know something from induction.
Yes, I don't have
what knowledge means.
Yes, induction is knowledge.
No, induction is not knowledge.
Yes, it is. I think this would depend on the definition of knowledge.
Yeah. So, Brenda, if I say that you've seen 1 million white swans, can you know the next one won't be black?
I can
only infer it. You can't know it.
Yeah, that's knowledge.
No, an inference isn't a knowledge claim.
Yes, it is. That's
No.
what
Brenda,
knowledge
could
claims
you just?
are
I
inferences.
think there's lots of different definitions. I've got the weirdest definition of knowledge in the room. Brenda, how do you define knowledge?
On the fallible list.
Yeah. So you
Right.
could be. You're just saying that you could be wrong about it.
Yeah. So it's degrees of confidence. So no, I don't have. You're confusing certainty with knowledge.
No.
Okay, so when
not
you say
necessarily.
knowledge, what are the things that need to be in that for it to be knowledge? Not certainty. We understand that, but what does need to be there?
I need to have a strong inductive inference, not a weak inductive inference, but a strong one.
Okay, so say that I say God exists because it's the inference to the best explanation, and then you say, "Well, I don't believe it's the best explanation."
That's not
But
how.
I say I know it though because it's the inference to the best explanation.
Right. So that's not how abductive reasoning works. Abductive reasoning is used for generating a hypothesis, which are then tested. So you have observations. Based on the observations, you abductively form a hypothesis based on inference to the best explanations, and then you test the hypothesis. And from there, then you can reason further from there. But abductive reasoning is literally affirming the consequent. It's logically fallacious. So you can't make a conclusion, a final conclusion based on abductive reasoning. It is used only for hypothesis generation and testing.
Okay, are you saying that an inference is synonymous with knowledge? That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Does it need to be true as well?
It has degrees of truth. It's probability.
Well,
so if I've seen like the example that you gave before about 10,000, I've seen 10,000 swans. Probably the next swan I see will be white.
Okay, so you've made that inference. Now the
Right.
next one is actually going to be black. Do you know that the next one is going to be white?
I have knowledge, and I proportion my knowledge to the probability.
It just sounds like a guess, like an educated guess, basically, is what knowledge is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So knowledge is an educated guess.
How does God interfering in that pattern, right, by placing the black swan, invalidate the fact that your knowledge that you've had until now is that the next swan will be white?
I think that's I think the difference here is that God is presumed to be omnipotent, so that he can But that is an excellent point to make. But I think that the answer to that would be that God is omnipotent and could do so at any time, and we don't think that black swans are omnipotent.
But I wouldn't invalidate it, right? It could be like how the Bible says Christ came at the fullness of time or something like that. Like a certain point would be the best point objectively or something like that.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. I'm gonna go head off to bed. It was nice talking to you.
Yeah, I'm about to get off here soon too.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Patty.
So
see ya.
I appreciate it. Yeah. So my understanding is that and in my system, the way of thinking, you have deductive inferences. Those guarantee truth, right? Because I can reason deductively to a certain truth, but inductive reasoning is valid reasoning, and it counts as knowledge, but it only gives us probabilistic truth. And then abductive reasoning is used within the scientific method in order to form a hypothesis, which is then subject to further testing. And that's my understanding of all of this subject matter. So I count an inductive inference as, so for instance, science doesn't give us certainty. It only gives us degrees of confidence. So I feel highly confident that the speed of light cannot be exceeded by any other object with mass, right? There's a way of phrasing it there, right? That can't happen, but there might be a way around it. People have thought that well, you could space-time itself. If you could have this soliton, and you have this Alakibu drive, and it creates a warp in space-time, and that space-time is permitted under relativity to travel faster than the speed of light. But for ordinary things, they will never be able to travel faster than the speed of light. So that's something I know, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
So you know some things that are false.
I think it's
He knows
possible
there's
that
a possible
I think-
species false.
I think it's possible that there are some things that I know that are in fact false, and I would discover that later.
Okay,
But
so right now you do know them, and they are false.
I think that's possible.
Okay, that's bizarre. I think you have the most bizarre definition of knowledge in the room.
But
I think it's a logical definition. I think that, but you would have to then acknowledge that right now you know that there's no God, and you could be wrong.
I could be wrong, sure. But so when I say I know that there's no God, I feel I have a high degree of certainty or confidence that X and X, such a being, couldn't exist for such and such reasons. And it would depend on how I defined that.
Right, but you can't be certain.
I could be certain.
It seems like the way that you define knowledge is.
If I could produce a deductive argument against the existence of God, then I could be certain.
It sounds like the way that you define knowledge is things that you have reason to believe.
Yes. Yes.
So you don't have a problem
Nick,
with Christians saying that they know God exists?
I'm sorry, what?
You don't have a problem with Christians saying they know God exists?
I don't believe them. I think that they are mistaken.
Wait, perhaps
guess
there's
is
been a
knowledge.
misunderstanding here or something. Brenda, when you say you know things that are false right now, that you don't know which they are or anything like that, or what are you actually trying to say, that you think you know things that are false but you don't actually know them, and you would say you know them but you don't, or are you saying that you do know them?
So it's 11:30. It's 11:20 here. I could say I know what time the sun is going to rise in the morning, whatever it's going to be. Let's say it's 6:32 in the morning. I could say I know that. But as it turns out, the Earth is hit by a gigantic meteor and we're annihilated, and the sun never rises again. So I was wrong.
Yeah, in the same way, a Christian could say they know God exists, but then end up being wrong. That's what he's saying is they know it, even though they could be wrong.
I'm still a little confused about Brenda's definition here.
It's just an educated guess. Is knowledge. That's all. That's basically all it is.
I'm really trying to hold on whether or not it's possible.
It's an inference based on extended experience is what it is.
Yeah. Inductive inferences are based on synthetic propositions, right, rather than analytic propositions. So analytic propositions are typically what we use in deductive reasoning. So all bachelors are unmarried men. John is an unmarried man. Therefore, John is a bachelor. That's deductively true.
That's deductive, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And so, but inductive would be all swans are white so far. The next swan I see will be white.
Right.
And conclusion would be probably the next swan I see will be white.
I'm sorry to ask the same question basically 3 times, because I'm just so sure I must be misunderstanding you. So you have this reason to believe that the next one will be white because the first 1,000 swans will be white. In fact, it's going to be black. You say that you know that it's going to be white, but is it wrong that you know that it's going to be right? Like, it's not wrong that you would say that, but is it wrong that you know that the next one's going to be white?
If I'm going to be very precise, I would say I have a high degree of confidence that the next one I see will be white. And I shouldn't say I have certainty that the next one will be white.
I'm not even asking
Sure.
you about certainty. I'm just trying to dig
Right.
down to understand your definition of
So,
knowledge.
so scientists shouldn't talk with absolute certainty.
Yeah, this is irrelevant.
Right.
Yeah, I
I'm
agree
just
with
try-
that.
I-
We're
I-
just talking
I'm-
about.
I'm
And
trying to
so,
figure
and
out.
so
I'm
I
trying to
shouldn't
figure out
talk
whether
with
or not
that.
it's possible to know false things under your view.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm trying to figure out if it's possible to know false things under your view. That's why I keep on asking this question, because it sounds like you're saying that you can know false things.
Yeah.
I can have an inference. I can make an inference that is high. The false one, the white swan one. The next one I see with odds of 1 in 10,000.
Mhm.
And I can have a high degree of confidence in that. So if the next one I see is black, that invalidates my conclusion, right?
Yep.
I'm not looking at that. I'm trying to figure out your definition of knowledge.
So Nick, yeah, the answer is yes. Like
Yeah.
Brenda would
okay.
say that Brenda knows the next one will be white, even if it is black, because fallibilism.
But I would say
So we all know Brenda's wrong, right?
I would to be consistent, and people often aren't, and they use colloquial language, but to be consistent, I should say I have a high degree of confidence or a high degree of certainty that the next one, 1 out of 10,000, will most likely be white.
Yeah, I don't know if certainty has degrees or not.
Like for instance, if I'm playing the deck with cards at a casino, I can attach degrees of confidence to whether or not the dealer has 21, and I can beat, he can beat my hand or not. We're playing 21, and I'm counting cards, so I have a high degree of confidence.
Probability,
right. But I don't know for certain. I don't have absolute certainty, but I have a sureness, a confidence, and I can count that as knowledge.
Okay, well, let me suggest one more hypothetical, and then if anybody else, what we'll do is because I need to get going. Let me suggest one more hypothetical, and then we'll let you guys all give a like a closing or whatever, like wrap up like what you think or whatever. So the last thing I would say is imagine a person who was born on an island with his family, and his family took him to an abandoned island and dropped him off. This guy or girl or whoever has never seen, this person has never seen anybody die before. Okay. And because they've never seen anybody die before, they've only seen living people, they infer that that they're not going to die. The person's not going to die. Now, would you say they know they're not going to die because all of the inductive, all their experience has been of people not dying? Would you say they know they're not going to die, even though we know they will?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Well, I'd say that they would have a degree of confidence based on their prior experience.
Right, but wouldn't you call that knowledge according to fallibilism?
Yeah, I would call that knowledge.
Okay. Yeah, all right. So let's just go around. We'll start with Will, and then Brenda, and then Nick. You can have the last word, and we'll just go around and just give your closing thoughts about everything, and then we'll take off.
I would just like to compliment Brenda, it being the minority opinion in the group tonight, for consistency, right? Even if it may not be the most logical in a empirical sense viewpoint that she holds, even if what she says may sound to others as absurd, she continues to be consistent in her opinions, and I give you a lot of credit for that. As a person who believes in Calvinist theology, I get hit with that hammer quite often, and that's one thing that I strive to be extremely consistent in the theology itself, even if though sometimes it sounds or comes off as being unempathetic or making God responsible for evil in the world, although I don't believe that he is, because while he allows it to happen, the person who commits it is the one who's responsible, in my view. But as far as the conversation was, so that goes back to the modern day debate topic of Canaanites. If there was an immoral aspect in that, it's not God who's responsible for it. It would be the Israelites. They're the ones that followed through with that, even though it was an instruction and a predestined plan for them to do. In the end, they're still the ones who committed the act. So if you find that to be immoral, which I don't, God's not the one responsible for it. The people that did it would be the ones that were responsible for it. So that's my basic stance, and regardless of how absurd that sounds, I'm going to stay consistent on that because that's what I get from the text. So, and
Sure.
Thanks for having me on. It was great to be here.
Thanks. Come back, Brenda.
CC, can I clip this part and put it on my YouTube channel?
What was that?
Can I clip this part and put it on
Yeah,
my?
sure. Yeah, I actually was watching earlier a video you posted with me. In it, I looked up my name to see if to search for this live stream because I couldn't find it because it wasn't like up yet or whatever. And the first thing that popped up was, or one of the things that popped up that I didn't make was a video that you made with me on, and I listened to it for a few.
It was a long time ago, and
Yeah.
I might be deleting that channel because it's just a mess, and I haven't attended to it. So this has been really, really enjoyable. Thank you. You don't know how timely this is. It's because it segues perfectly with the textbook that I'm following in class right now. So maybe I'll even get a good grade off of this.
Sure.
So appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I talk about this stuff all the time. I'm on Discord. I haven't really been on YouTube much at all lately. I've been on Discord mostly. So just I've been having these same conversations. But go ahead, Nick. You want what do you want to say something?
Well, thanks for hosting, CC. Yeah, it was great to have a conversation, and it was really nice to talk to Brenda for so long and sort of dig down into her views. And I really appreciated that she did try to remain consistent. I think there's a lot of people on the internet that believe something is right, and they just want other people to respect that, and so they're willing to lie and just ignore entailments and things like that and hide the ball and things. And I don't feel like Brenda was trying to do that tonight, and so I really respect that.
Yeah.
I think that there's some positions that sound absurd to me and non-stipulative. Like, for instance, the idea that you could know things that aren't true. That would put us in a strange position where we might say something like, "I wish." It reminds me of a joke that they say, "Academics know so much. The problem is most of it isn't true." And it would put us, if that were the way that we define knowledge, it would put us in this weird situation where we'd be like, "Oh, I wish that guy knew less."
Well,
he'd be a better person if he was less knowledgeable because he knows all these false things.
Yeah, that might be the case. I mean, if you think back 400 years ago, a lot of the stuff that academics of 400 years ago thought was true is just baloney.
Yeah, and I just find it strange to call that knowledge. I don't think that they knew things. I have a strange definition of knowledge as well that I think we all intuitively use, but most people don't agree with me. My basis for knowledge is it needs to be true and it needs to be believed. It doesn't have anything to do with degree of certainty or good reasons or anything like that.
Oh, well, yeah, that model's been used. That's basically JTB, justified true
It's not
belief.
JTB. It does not have the J.
It doesn't have to be justified, right? That's that kind of accounts for the Edmund Gettier's issues, I think.
Right.
Yeah, I think Edmund Gettier kind of I think he kind of challenged that
He showed that you can have unjustified true beliefs. So
yeah, and last time I talked to Ozzy on Discord with Dragnon and a bunch of people, he basically said he agreed with that. And
there we go.
That was interesting. And I was like, no way. Some of the other people in the room didn't even believe it. And I said,
Well,
no,
I really appreciate that because I think that's just how we use the words. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people just paper over get-ear problems, and I don't have a
I
solution.
agree with that.
I don't have a solution for that. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
I don't have a
So I
solution.
agree with that. And so, yeah, I really appreciate everybody coming on and giving your thoughts. And, I thought it'd be a cool thing to do an after show because I was free tonight. I was actually going to make a video anyway. So I was like, you know what, just do an after show instead and let everybody else come on. But, yeah, I've always done my channel kind of localized. So like whenever I talk to people on my channel or like I'm like making a video, I'm like, hey, I'm basically talking to people that know me from here, like either G Plus or from YouTube or Modern Day Debate. So I've always been kind of localized like that. And so I may start making videos though that are more like broad to a broader audience, not necessarily for popularity, but like sometimes I've been told by a lot of people that, well, by multiple people, I should say that I have all this in-group talk. I'll be like mentioning names like G-Man or somebody like that, and people who just are just somebody that's looking up, like let's say God debate or something finds me and they're like watching my stuff and they're like, dude, you spent the like first 10 minutes just talking about random people that nobody else knows. And so I may start making some new content that's like I got an idea for a video called How to Read the Bible, which I may make. A lot of people I speak to, they don't understand how to read the Bible because when they pick it up, they get past the first part of Genesis and they start reading, he begat Arphaxad and he begat, this guy, and it's like this long begats, and they're like, where's Jesus at in this? And I'm like, no, Jesus isn't even in this part. So people don't even know the sections.
Oh dear, you stepped in it. Jesus isn't in the beginning of the Bible?
Well, they mean like the narrative of Jesus's life and all that.
Oh, that's right. It's the Elohim. It's the committee, right?
What was that?
It's the Elohim, the committee. Right?
Elohim? Oh, you mean the Elohim?
The Elohim, yes, the committee.
You're talking about the divine council. You mean the divine council?
That was the Elohim. That was before God was God.
Well, no, Elohim just means.
I'm giving you a hard time. Come on.
Okay, gotcha. I was gonna say.
I was laughing, Brenda.
Yeah. So, but anyway, yeah. So I'm thinking about making something like more broad videos like that, so it's not as specified to like our group to because I sometimes I make too many videos that are just like, okay, so you guys remember what Nick said on episode 4, and everybody's tuning in is just like, who is Nick? And like, no, we didn't watch that one. So anyway, and then I may go into doing some politics stuff too, because I just feel like there's a lot of bad takes out there, and I've stayed away from politics on my channel. But
yeah, that might be a good idea.
I figured you might say that.
It's kind of a minefield right now, though.
Yeah, but I feel like there's some like my biggest thing why I started even a G Plus and channel like long time ago, years ago, before this channel, before I came back, was because I just don't like when there's like minor, like when there's things that people just like, if they only understood a distinction, they wouldn't, one simple distinction will change their entire view on a thing. And I just feel like I heard so many conversations, of things where it's like, just like 2 terms could change their entire outlook on this thing, so anyway, and that's how I feel sometimes listening to some of these bad takes by political guys that have like, 10,000 people watching live streams and stuff, So anyway,
I'd warn you that you're going to get downgraded for having political stuff and being a small channel, but you already deal with Christianity, so you're already being downgraded.
Right. I was going to say, well, yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I got to take off later.
Yep. All right then. Well, yeah, that'll do it for me. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Thanks for Mine Onion and Brian Stevens and all the other people for tuning in and checking this out. Feel free to message me if you guys, if there's anything that you want to see or hear me, have a discussion on. And yeah, if not, join the Discord, and I'll send you to some links to some to some of the Discords that I'm on constantly. I'm on Destiny's Discord a lot, and politics, and sometimes I get on Ask Yourselves, and a few others. But yeah, let me know if you guys want anything. And anyway, thanks for being here and checking this out.
Thank you, bye.